I'm so nervous for this. Today, I'm gonna be doing something I've never attempted before. Surviving 100 days on hardcore Ark Survival Ascended, or at least trying to. And the rules are simple. Maximum difficulty, no mods allowed, and no dying allowed. Because if I die, my character gets deleted and I have to restart from day one. And to make matters worse, I have to 100% the entire map before day 100. That means taming all 3 brand new creatures, conquering all 5 artifact caves, building one of the bases of all time, and taking down Ark Valguero Ascended's brand new boss, Grendel, on Gamma, Beta, and Alpha difficulty, all without dying one single time. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. It all started right here on the Chalk Hills beach, where I scratched my arm for the 837th time, and after messing with my graphics settings so my game doesn't look like a polygon, I introduced my bird-like neighbor to my fist.
Each time when I come here, I am abused.
And proceeded to launch 7 berries down her unconscious esophagus to harness the power of friendship. But anyways, it was now time to start Ark Survival Ascended, because on hardcore mode, even the smallest creature could end my entire run if I'm not prepared. So with that in mind, I did the normal Ark stuff, fighting a tree to the death so I could harvest its wood, firmly grasping a very large rock, and crafting a pickaxe for the 2097th time of my career. Alright, now we just need a hatchet. And after clocking out from a 3-minute grueling shift of hard labor, I was now a humble level 4. So I opened up my brain, unlocked the ability to not be naked, and I was gonna unlock the sleeping bag as well. But then I remembered, I can't actually respawn, because we're going deathless, boys. Unfortunately. Oh, and by the way, the mods that you see right here, I just removed them. It was from a different video, but everything here is completely vanilla hardcore. But now that I had survived for a total of 4 minutes, my new goal was to tame a pteranodon. Mainly because I needed a safe base location since we're on hardcore, and I can't risk getting executed by a random terror bird in the process. Sorry. So I spent the rest of day 1 exploring the Easy Zone beach, looking for anything that could help me survive, and it didn't take long until I found Bowser here. Or at least what's left of him, God rest his soul. But after a brief moment of silence, I used a stone hatchet to remove the spoiled meat from his lifeless corpse, because he's about to live on in the form of narcotics that I'm gonna use to drug a bird, man. These guys also give keratin and hide, which is needed for a lot of different saddles as well. But anyways, after I was finished committing some atrocities, I found a white supply drop, which gave me 2 cooked meat, I will not question the source, and a spear. Wait, that's a spear blueprint. Well, that's actually useless. And it seemed like everything was going pretty well so far. But as quick as you can get things in this game, you can lose them even quicker. And as day 1 came to an end, everything was about to change. And I couldn't have been more unprepared. It was now day 2, and as the sun rose over Valguero, I couldn't really do too much, because I needed to level up. So I began my morning by breaking off a spear inside the eye socket of a dodo man and his lovely wife, which did get me about 4 levels closer to a pteranodon saddle. But I was still pretty far away, and I really needed to get moving if I wanted to start taming stuff and survive for the full 100 days. So after demolishing a small crop plot that I got from that white supply drop on day 1, wow, that saved me about 5 seconds of farming. I attended a college seminar on how to craft drugs in the Stone Age, mortar and pestle, some bolas, and we do a bow. And at this exact moment, I realized that the Pteranodon saddle requires level 38. And without explorer notes on this map, that's probably not happening today, but the raft only required level 16. I just needed 5 more levels and I could get out of here and find a safe gated community to build a house. So I crafted a campfire and some bolas. But while I was having my dodo neighbors for dinner, pun intended, a wild degenerate appeared out of nowhere and he stole all of my lunch money. Dude, you just destroyed the campfire. I really wanted revenge on this heathen, but for some reason there wasn't a single ounce of fiber anywhere nearby. So I had to sprint a double triathlon with the sole purpose of touching grass, but I did need this to defend myself anyway, so I crafted a bow and 20 stone arrows. Bro, when I'm crafting, it looks like I'm a resident of San Andreas.
Here we go again.
And with a bow in my hotbar, and some more spoiled meat that I extorted from Bowser's late cousin, it was time for a test drive. Sorry about that. And as I headed across the beach, my confidence was at an all-time high because I had one thing on my mind.
Is there no way we can get rid of him?
Not without cause, Michael.
I have cause. It is because I hate him.
As a stone arrow penetrated his earlobe, my mortal enemy didn't stand a chance. And a few seconds later, I decided to adopt this random orphan child. I wonder what happened to his parents. But my courageous act of selflessness didn't last long, because 3 seconds later, this happened. What? Where did you come from? How many of you are there? But after I finished playing Mortal Kombat with the family lineage of Dilo, I hit level 16, and that means I can finally make a raft. And playing in hardcore mode makes everything 10 times more terrifying. It's like playing for the first time all over again when anything can kill you. But I know somebody that literally can't die in Raid Shadow Legends. For a limited time, Ultimate Death Knight is back. And bro is a certified menace to medieval society, because he literally has a passive called Too Awesome to Die, where he roleplays as a punching bag. And this dude, who has 0 meat on his bones by the way, somehow redirects all damage to himself, protecting your entire team. He's like an anorexic masochist. It's broken, man. It's unfair. And right now, you can get him for completely free if you're a new player that downloads using my link and you use the promo code UDKing. But now that you have a tank, you're gonna need some damage. And lucky for you, Raid is partnering with Paramount in one of the most reptilian crossovers of all time, featuring Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, April, and Shredder. And you can get Michelangelo for completely free by just logging in for 7 days between now and November 13th. But if 2 entire legendaries wasn't enough for you, well, first of all, stop being greedy. But yes, there's even more. Because if you download Raid using my QR code on screen or the link in the description below, you'll immediately get a huge starter pack with the epic champion Chonoru. And when you hit level 15, you're gonna get Uugo, one of the best support champions in the entire game. And once you're in, there's 5 different legendary promo codes you can choose from. The first is Ultimate Death Knight, and this is the one I'm gonna be going with. But if you'd rather mix things up, Sun Wukong is an amazing damage dealer, and there's also Alice the Wanderer, Tuhonorak, and Tholen Foulbeard as well. Just keep in mind that you can only use 1 new player promo code, and you gotta use it within 48 hours of making your account. And if you want to find me in game, I'm under the clan Juztify's Jungle. You can download Raid today by using the QR code on screen or the link in the description below, and thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video. And that was exactly what I planned on doing. Emphasis on the word planned, because 10 seconds later, for absolutely no reason, mind you, a random Oviraptor started assaulting my kneecap. Wait, why are you hitting me? Oh no, bro, please don't do this. I perished. Out of all the ways to die, how did I die to an Oviraptor? So, yeah, good times. And since I'm in hardcore, my character just got deleted. And now I have to restart from day 1. And for me, that means an hour of progress. But don't worry, because I'm gonna speed it up for you guys. Just give it about 5 seconds. Okay, so just over an hour has passed, but we're officially all caught up. I'm already regretting playing this in hardcore. Like, what if I just miss a jump on day 47 inside a random lava cave? Are you serious, dude? But anyways, the raft was in the water, and it was time to start exploring and taming some bigger creatures. And my first course of action was to craft some cloth armor, because public nudity is still a crime. And because, you know, if I would have done that earlier, maybe I wouldn't have died to an Oviraptor. But directly across the river on my raft, I found this dolphin fella, who did not have a life. But he did have organic polymer. Actually, really nice. Okay. And step 2 to my master plan on canceling this beach vacation was advancing to the Metal Age. So I did some home renovation, adding a refining forge to my pirate ship, smacked a river rock with a pickaxe about 347 times, and I now had a total of 17 metal. So while I was letting that man cook, I gathered some more fiber, crafted 50 stone arrows, and upgraded to hide armor, which was perfectly tailored to my gigantic thunder thighs, by the way. I was low-key geared up for war. And if you're wondering why, well, the answer to that question is this level 140 baby trike. No, I'm not going to war with a child, but he is going to be the greatest narco-berry servant of all time when he becomes of working age. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of how relationships are hard, which is why today I'm going to teach you how to end them. At this point, the fight was going, well, I wouldn't say okay, but it was going. But there was one problem. I thought 50 arrows was gonna be enough. And I was catastrophically mistaken. Because when her husband joined in, I started questioning the morality of my decisions. Because this man had an astronomical amount of health. And in hindsight, I don't know why I didn't just tame her instead of doing all this for no reason. But I was already in too deep to my questionable ethics. And if only one of us was gonna make it off this beach alive, I was gonna make sure that that one of us was me. But eventually, as day 3 came to an end, I won. But for some reason, the baby trike had ran away.
Well, maybe it's just because you're ugly.
And I spent like 10 minutes scouring the edges of the earth to find this dude. But on day 4, out of the goodness of my heart, I adopted a poor orphan child whose mother mysteriously abandoned him. And that's the story of how I met Spike the Trike. I hope you like narco berries, buddy. So that took like 15 minutes, and the metal should be all cooked up by now. Or at least that's what I thought. Because as I began walking towards what looked like an empty raft, well, first of all, the metal was not cooked because the refining forge was gone. Where's my refining forge? My refining forge, my mortar and pestle, and all of my stuff inside have completely just vanished off the face of the earth. How did that even happen? I think that it might be because I just updated my game. Maybe? I don't know. But what I did know is that I needed another refining forge. And the metal was cooking up once again. But what happened next? Well, I was not prepared. So I was just making some parachutes because I have to make sure I don't die since it's hardcore, right? But then I came back to my raft and, bro, why is there a campfire? Wait, what? Somehow, the mortar and pestle, the campfire, and my refining forge from earlier were all back, including the stuff that I left inside. So I sat there, flabbergasted. Am I being gaslit right now? But I mean, hey, the stuff's back. So I looted the double-decker refining forges to make some metal for a smithy, and I used my new smithy to advance to the metal age. Okay, we're looking pretty good. But watching all of my hard work while doing absolutely nothing was making Spike the Trike very hungry. So out of the goodness of my heart, I fed him one singular Amar berry and informed him that his free trial at life was about to expire. The scary thing is that's how it works in real life too. But anyways, while I was waiting on that brother to stop being such a child, I got some more metal for a crossbow, crafted up a boatload of arrows, no pun intended, and after some waiting around, day 5 began, and Spike the Trike was officially a man. So I celebrated by getting revenge on my mortal enemy, and gave some local degenerates a new purpose in their meaningless life. Y'all are about to become a trike saddle. And just like that, Spike the Trike was ready for his 25-hour shift in the narco berry factory. Well, that was fast. In about 3 minutes, Spike the Trike had farmed over 2,000 narco berries. So we headed back slowly and queued up 248 buckets of pure good night's sleep using the spoiled flesh of a dolphin. And while that was cooking up in the drug lab, I used my pirate ship to transport an absolute behemoth across the 7 seas and queued up some melatonin laced arrows because it was time to get our very first fire and finally get off the beach. But then I kind of got distracted by this cave, which somehow had so much fog that it made the colors on my game look more washed than my car after visiting this guy. And it wasn't even a cave, it was just like a tunnel thing. But anyways, after my daily procrastination, I finally was a high enough level for that PT sub. And now it was time. So I crossed back over to the White Cliffs where I found a level 140 baby pteranodon. Where's your level 140 mother, young man? His level 140 mother was just around the corner. So I used Ebola to tie up her legs, sent 2 of my best-selling bedtime stories directly into her prefrontal cortex, and tucked her into bed. But now I needed prime meat, and here's where we ran into a problem. This is the easy zone, right? So that means there's nothing scary here, which is good, but that's not good when we want prime meat, because we need to find like an apex predator for that. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose track of his torpor, so if you go into this tame tracker tab right here, you select tames in progress, and you pick the little locator thing, it'll stay tracked on your screen just like this. Because my next destination is deeper into the White Cliffs. There's gonna be some apex predators there for prime meat, but there's also gonna be some apex predators there for murdering me. Yeah, I'm a little bit scared right now. But anyways, as I arrived in the White Cliffs, I immediately dehydrated. So I went back to make a water skin because I'm not risking losing the run to some water. But as I was saying, this was going to be extremely risky because even though I have bolas for raptors and terror birds, all it would take is one Carno to send me back to that character creation screen. And to make matters worse, about 10 seconds later, this happened. Bro, what is that? That was in fact a megaraptor, a brand new creature that they just added to Valguero Ascended and to my nightmares. So I decided to stay away from that, and after witnessing a deinonychus beef with a man 30 times his size by assaulting his shoulder blade, that man just got destroyed. There was only one thing here that 1v1ing would not result in my death, and it was this guy.
Hello, how are you?
Mr. Diplo believes in love and not war, meaning he will never fight back no matter how many times I shoot him in the face. And that's pretty inspirational, so I decided to honor him by launching 65 stone arrows directly into his eye socket and using my pickaxe to check the durability of his right kneecap. Thanks for the prime meat donation, buddy. Anyways, I made it out of the White Cliffs all in one piece, unlike some people. And since I had more prime meat than I needed for the 140 Pteranodon, I decided to knock out this level 95 as well for a backup. I should have enough for both of these guys. And since Mr. Level 140 has been unconscious for like 20 minutes, he was already super hungry. And he ate like 4 prime meat in approximately 2 seconds. Bro just did a mukbang. And now that he was officially brainwashed into being my best friend, I adopted his level 140 stepson, and that's the story of how I met Terabyte, Tiny Terry, and this fella, who I named El Chapo. Welcome to the family, son. It took about 10 more minutes for the level 95 to 10, but I decided to name him Terrence for old time's sake, and with 1 Pteranodon saddle, and a small army on an even smaller raft, it was almost time to leave the beach. But there was just one more problem. Tiny Terry is still tiny. So I wasted some time flying through the chalk hills, farming some crystal, making a spyglass, and taking Tiny Terry on a brisk walk along the beach. Alright bro, can you just grow up already? And I won't make you guys wait around with me, but he took about 20 more minutes, and in the meantime, I tried to go grab this red supply drop, got distracted by a statue of our cat-like overlord, not even grabbing the supply drop because I'm not level 70, I'm inferior, and finally locating this giant cave inside the chalk cliffs. Yo, this place would be an amazing base location. But I wasn't going to be setting my base up here because I had a more sophisticated place in mind. And you'll see that real soon because after absolutely nuking an Ovis man out of his meaningless existence, 37-minute spoil timer. I've been using so many mods that I forgot these things don't stack. I found a pack of wild deinonychus, but since I'm in hardcore, it's a bit too risky right now, and I decided that it was time to just head back to the raft where Tiny Terry was now a full-grown man. It's about time. And despite me missing 95% of his childhood, at least he had one core memory of us going on a 5-second walk. But anyways, Terry is ready for international travel because the base location that I was telling you about earlier, well, it's over there, kinda. And once we get a base set up, we can start taming bigger stuff, finding the brand new creatures, taking on all of the caves for artifacts, and preparing for the final boss fight. I'm so nervous, bro. I don't think I've ever beat an Ark map without dying. But at this point, we were almost there. And we were also passing by this glowing purple cave thing, which if you've never seen this before, it's actually the entrance to the underground aberration biome. Yeah, there's like a whole nother map under the map. And we'll have to go in there later, but I'm not going in there right now. But anyways, the river ended up ahead, and we had to go on foot from here. So I saddled up Terabyte and took flight to the northeast corner of the map. And the reason that I was up here in the northeast corner was, well, it's not because I'm building here, and it's not because of the metal nodes scattered everywhere either. The real reason we're here is one of the most broken base locations of all time in Ark PvP servers. And I won't rant about this for too long because you probably don't care, but this giant waterfall cave entrance thing is where I lived for almost 2 years on official Small Tribes PvP. And I'll explain why it's unwritable later when we actually go down there, but right now we have more important matters at hand. Wait, what is this? For those who have ascended. Hopefully my name will be on this shrine by day 100. But anyways, I continue trekking the Valgueran Earth for any semblance of a safe base location, and I somehow found myself all the way over in the tundra. Now, I'm not sure what kind of voodoo rituals be taking place in the tundra, but someone was trying to sacrifice a massive fish to the Ark gods. What in tarnation is going on over here? But now that I'm officially traumatized for the day, there was something else in the tundra as well. And it's right over here. Welcome to the Oil Cave, notorious for containing oil. Nothing spawns in here, and it's probably the safest location possible that we've found so far. But the main issue is that I'm not a fan of the sounds of oil leakage ASMR. So I decided to leave that for now because I think we can do better. And I didn't know it just yet, but my future base was right around the corner. Because after grabbing this yellow drop with a Mastercraft Ceratos saddle inside, oh nice, all the way past the tundra and next to the redwoods, I came across an old abandoned castle. Oh, this might be it. And this place checked all of the boxes. There was water nearby, I get to live like royalty, and over in the back, through this little hole, cave, or whatever that really needs some lighting, is an area I can block off and be super safe. This was perfect for hardcore. So everybody, I think this is it, bro. So after physically assaulting a tree and turning him into a storage box for all my carry-on luggage, well, my raft is over there. All the way over there. So on day 9, I've saddled up a birdman named Terabyte, took an international flight to the center of the simulation, and then I found this. Whoa, what is that? That was yet another castle. And this one was directly in the center of the map with not a single degenerate in sight. Oh, dinosaurs aren't even spawning here. And I know I just said this about the ruins over there, but
it was perfect, down to the last minute details.
They even already built a base for me, which is pretty great because now I don't have to embarrass myself by building a square. And to top it all off, over at the gate of the castle, there was a bridge attached to the herbivore island, which is also safe and filled with resources. So once again, and I feel like I've been doing this for way too long, but there was a change of plans because this is the one for real this time. So I flew all the way back to my raft, spent 15 minutes holding up on the left stick of my controller, docked my pirate ship at a private island, and it was time to set up. The Tyranna gang was pretty easy because they can all just like fly up top, and the items should have been easy as well because Spike the Trike can deadlift 800 pounds. But there was one thing that he cannot do. Fit through a doorway. Spike the Trike was obese, and he can no longer fit in his own house. And I may have wasted like 20 minutes while parkouring around my base because I was talking to my friend on Discord. But long story short, it's now day 10. The spiral staircase has joined the dark side for some reason, and it took me like 30 seconds to place down this foundation because if it wasn't exactly a perfect 90-degree angle, it was gonna drive me insane. But with the foundation out of the way, literally, and a forge on standby, it was almost time to start taking on the caves and gathering the artifacts for the boss fight. But first, well, I need to actually set up the base. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to my metal hatchet.
I do it again.
Get wrecked. So we've spent about 10 days just to get this base, but the base is looking pretty great, and in hardcore I have to be super careful about everything, so with all that considered, I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. And I'm also pretty happy that there's a few milliliters of water between me and my mortal enemies. But now that we have the base, well, here comes the hard part, actually beating the game. And step 1 is making some cryopods and taming some carnivores to take on the artifact caves. So I made a quick trip back to that storage box that I left earlier because I needed the oil for the cryopods. But what I didn't account for, however, is the fact that I'm in the redwoods. And if you're not sure why I'm scared of the redwoods, well, it's because a few seconds later, this happened. Oh no! A microscopic raptor just tried to remove my life. I hate those guys. And even though I have parachutes, all it takes is one dismount into a carno and the entire run could be over. Just like that. I really needed to start being more careful. But anyways, I was still breathing. So I gathered all of the items for cryopods at my base, found this yellow drop that gave me 200 pounds of metal walls, and now I can't move. Because Terabyte has the weight capacity of a 3-year-old with no arms. I'm gonna have to drop a load. Wait, that did not come out right. The flight took an exorbitant amount of time because I really wanted to keep those metal walls so I could demolish them for resources, and I don't know why I didn't drop them off at my base. but I mean, sometimes my brain doesn't work. But anyways, on day 11, we arrived, and the red obelisk was an interesting place, mainly because it was covered in terror demons. But after I waited around for everything to kind of settle down, I opened the terminal, and I noticed. Did I drop the crystal? Bro, what is wrong with me? So, yeah. 3 cryopods, some fibrous activities, and 4 more cryopods later, I had 7 cryopods. And back over at my humble abode, after wreaking havoc on 5 metal walls, I used my wall-like inheritance to upgrade to some flak armor, because protecting my internal organs is a pretty huge step along my journey of not entering the afterlife. And now that we actually had the cryos, Spike the Trike and El Chapo himself are now living rent-free. But with the base finally being built, the cryopods finally being crafted, and El Chapo still being useless, my next goal to beat this map was to tame a carnivore so I can defend myself and use it to steal some deinonychus eggs. Because I'm hoping that an army of deinonychus can take on Aberration and the artifact caves. I just needed to get some eggs and breed them. And the plan was looking pretty solid, but there were 3 things that I needed. First of all, I made a sickle, which I used to farm 1,500 fiber in 30 seconds. Next, I made 100 stone arrows and laced them with nighttime routines. And finally, since we're in hardcore and I definitely can't afford to risk anything, I'm gonna do something that I really don't do very often. I'm gonna build a trap. This took me about 15 minutes at the start of day 12. But if you would so kindly direct your eyeballs to the screen you're watching on, I think we can shorten that 15 minutes to about 7 seconds. Nice. But this time, I kind of wanted to do something different than just the stereotypical Rex or whatever. And over here in the tundra, I saw a woolly rhino. And rhinos are actually very strong in this game. But according to Dododex, I'm gonna be retirement age before he finishes taming. 50 minutes, okay. And I value my time slightly higher than 1 rhino per hour. But I also noticed there's some beauties here. And I kind of liked the idea of taming one of them, but I didn't like the idea of getting excommunicated from life, because them dudes are scary. I can't risk that in hardcore. But then I had another idea. First of all, there was a penguin ice school reunion going on at the local bird, and my first course of action was to crash the party and their existence, because Ark rewards players for slaying babies in this game by giving prime meat for some reason. And while I was here, I also managed to create another orphan. And that probably was the second worst thing that happened to that baby Yankee that day, because the first was having his name legally changed to Fred Flintstone. Why are there so many unsupervised children here? But anyways, like I was saying, I had a new idea. Hey, how's it going, dude? And emphasis on the word new, because we're taking it back to the White Cliffs. And on day 13, I began searching for my new target, the megaraptor. But about 30 seconds into my nationwide megaraptor search, I immediately found a level 145 Rex. Okay, so you know how I said I wasn't gonna like just tame the cliche carnivores? Well, he's level 145. Having a Rex would make it a lot easier for me to tame all of the other new creatures in this map. At least that's what I told myself. So after becoming the owner of a brand new trap house, I alerted the attention of a behemoth. Over here, buddy. And I tried to kite him into the trap, but kiting this dude like 50 feet over there was actually one of the worst experiences of my entire Ark career. Because this man gets distracted on something literally every 5 seconds. Bro must have been raised by an iPad kid. Eventually though, after a lot of grit, we made it. But this wouldn't be the end of that, because after patiently waiting on my new employee to finish his Bronto breakfast, well, it didn't go so well. I forgot about Ark Ascended's pathfinding. And I really don't feel like trying to live this entire experience again through commentary, but long story short, this man took 5 years off of my lifespan and 5 of my brain cells. Finally, bro. Oh my gosh, that took like 20 minutes. And just like that, the Rex was now officially a member of the trap lifestyle. And I wasted no time in sending 85 of my best-selling bedtime stories directly into the subconscious. Until eventually, the behemoth had fallen. Let's go. And while he got some very much needed beauty sleep, I casually just ripped out someone's ribcage, and I found another Ovis, which, like, I think they spawn everywhere in the Chalk Hills, by the way. But even with mutton, this tame was gonna take about 20 minutes. So while he was busy eating mutton while unconscious in the trap house, I started off day 14 by heading back to base to try and make a Rex saddle. But unfortunately, the Rex saddle Ingram requires level 74. Dude, why am I such a low level? So I yet again headed back across the universe, and this time I set my sights on the real reason I was here in the first place, finding a megaraptor. And if you haven't seen it yet, the taming method for these guys is one of the weirdest taming methods in the game. But you'll see that very soon, because over on the east side of the White Cliffs, I found one, level 55. I wanted a higher level, to be honest, but since he's a new creature, I decided to make an exception just this one time. So in order to tame a megaraptor, first you have to locate their altar. It's like this spike thing that comes out the ground. Oh, there it is. And this is why I say the taming method for these guys was kind of weird. Requires torch to challenge megaraptor. Wait, do I have to 1v1 this man? But before I could even do that, oh, the Rex is done. All right, hold that 1v1, buddy. I'll be right back. But within that 30 seconds that I was gone, the megaraptor had moved over and someone else was here. So I took this opportunity to summon the newest member of our tribe, Watch, as he commits an atrocity. And since we were already ruining lives today, I proceeded to adopt a level 50 Rexling and steal the unborn child of a deinonychus while his father was at the store. But anyways, the megaraptor had wandered all the way over here around the corner, and his altar was now gone. I'm not really sure how to make it spawn back, but while I was regaining stamina, apparently I was also being hunted. Oh, Terabyte, move, bro! That was super close. But the dude's altar was still gone for no reason. And he's also level 55, which isn't even good anyways. So it was time to move on. And I needed a higher level anyways if I was gonna use it for caves or maybe even the boss fight. So I spent the rest of day 14 searching for a higher level, while simultaneously using my unnamed Rex to slowly decimate every deinonychus within a 10-mile radius. With the sole purpose of stealing their offspring, of course. Oh, 145. These videos take an astronomical amount of time to make, which is why I only upload once every 83 business days. So if you're enjoying it, and or if you're a Moss Chops, please consider subscribing. It's completely free, and you can always change your mind later. We're only 2,000 subs away from 200k, so let me know in the comments if you were a part of the first 200k. Oh, and one more thing. Have a nice day. The deinonychus are actually really useful as well, and you'll see why later when I actually hatch them, because at the start of day 15, I found my target. Oh, there's a megaraptor. But then he got absolutely destroyed. Okay, really, bro? But after witnessing the Rock wake up from his morning nap, level 25 chalk elemental, I continued the search until eventually I made it back around to the level 55, and this time his altar was waiting. Now, I would like to preface what you're about to witness with a quick disclaimer, because I watched Syntac's tutorial and I was under the impression that I get teleported into a horror minigame when I start this thing, right? But when I approached the spike, with a torch in hand, of course, well, it looked like I got teleported, and there was green fog everywhere, right? But what actually happened was this. Oh, where did you come from? I ran, and since Terabyte was parked on this rock, let me up! Various teeth and a multitude of claws were contacting my armor. I was spamming whistles like Flow Rider. And when I jumped off of this cliff, opening a parachute to not fall to a grisly demise, I watched as two young heathens went bungee jumping without a bungee. Later, losers. But that was super close. Bro, can this fog get off of my screen? Because if my flak armor broke right there, I would have perished in like 2 hits. And once again, this is hardcore, so we'd be reset all the way back to day 1 if that happened. Oh my gosh, bro, I got to be more careful. And I'm gonna explain that taming process for the megaraptor a bit more when we come back later, but for now, it was time to leave. So after biting a deinonychus to the death, stealing his eggs, another 145, okay, and hiring the mafia to home wreck an entire civilization of degenerates, I adopted a very ambitious young man who was named Optimus Prime. Alright, let's get out of here. But anyways, back in my not-so-humble abode, Fred Flintstone and Wolf Smith were now working class age. So I summoned Optimus Prime and a baby Rex that's too low of a level to deserve being named, and I forced Spike the Trike to farm some berries for the younglings. But despite making direct eye contact with Death himself, the mission was a resounding success. Because when I hit level 74, I'll have a saddle for my brand new Rex. And even though most of these deinonychus eggs are kinda trash, 2 of them are level 145. And I kinda wanna try and take on some of the easier caves with a giant pack of these guys to just start getting some artifacts for the boss fight. But there was one problem. I need to actually hatch the eggs. And to make an air conditioner, I needed a fabricator. And to make a fabricator, I need 35 metal. And yes, Fred Flintstone here could farm 35 metal without lifting a finger, mainly because he doesn't have any fingers, but that's not the problem. The problem is that Terabyte is built like a paperclip. I needed something stronger to carry the metal.
Who's gonna carry the boats and the logs?
So on day 16, after transforming the local rock population into 3 stone gateways, I took the younglings on a brisk walk and let a baby carnivore try out the vegan lifestyle for an imprint. Because now that everything was taken care of at base, we were about to head to the tundra. And our goal was to locate an Argentavis. Level 25, 85, 85, 67, 15, 150. And with the Birdman being located, I decided to set up the trap directly on top of the shrine to the fish gods, because I wanted to like stay off the ground mainly. I think I just desecrated sacred land. But once that was set up, I got his attention, led him right into my trap, closed the door behind me of course because I have manners, and began some brainwashing. What? How did I miss that? Bro just got wallbanged. And my plan was to execute one of these Ice Age enthusiasts for Prime Me for this guy. But for some reason, there's like Ovis in every single biome on this entire map, and I'm loving it. But anyways, it took about 20 minutes before Stephen Hawking joined the dark side, and after severely underestimating how much a terabyte of stamina is, oh no. Just 5 more megabytes, bro. I made it home, and I needed about 30 more keratin for Steven's saddle. So I did what any upstanding citizen would do in my situation. Command my son to eat the neighbors. Thanks, son. And at this point, I decided that I should probably give a name to my favorite son, so I named him Mr. T. Wait a minute. Bro, why are you standing like that? My next victim was this river rock, because I needed some quick metal to craft an Anki saddle, because Stephen Hawking and Fred Flintstone were the duo that nobody asked for, but they were also the duo that I needed the most, because it was time for a metal run. And while I'm flying over to the mountain real quick, have you guys had any issues with like the fog on this map? What I mean is normally you remove it and the game looks way better, right? But on this map, sometimes it just looks really washed out and weird and dark, so like every 15 minutes I have to turn the fog back on. Makes absolutely no sense. Also, this flight is way longer than I thought, but eventually we arrived at the destination. And now, ladies and gentle soars, prepare your eyes for the greatest collab of all time. Brought to you by Metallica. Big profit. On day 18, it was time to hit the road, or the sky, I guess, because after a non-zero amount of time had passed, we made it home. And since Fred Flintstone is too large to fit inside my living room, bro needs to lay off the fruity pebbles, I had to popcorn all 3 rows of raw metal from the doorway into the forge. But this was low-key gonna take like 4 hours to smelt, so to fix the issue, I made the executive decision to give Stephen Hawking an overtime shift, but this time with negative pay, because deforesting the tri-state area is surely the best way to farm wood. But anyways, with all of the forges all getting lit, we could finally, wait, what was I even getting this metal for again? Oh, right. It was time to hatch the deinonychus eggs. So while I was waiting for a few more ingots to become smelted, I was exploring the beach. And I wasn't even going to include this in the video, but I randomly found a house that looks like it belongs to a smurf. What in the torture chamber is going on back here? And what is that? Anyways, I farmed some more igneous rocks so I could quadruple my metal production. Bro, can you move? And a few minute minutes later, the Industrial Revolution had begun. So on day 19, after I queued up some electronics for an air conditioner, I took Stephen Hawking out to farm the crystal, all the crystal. fabricated a generator, an air conditioner, and sent Stephen Hawking on a third overtime shift, this time into the oil rig so I could make some gasoline. I don't know why I didn't use an Anki for that. And now, finally, everything was ready. So I Ark Survival Ascended down my staircase into the haunted basement of my castle because this room was so massive that I could make a breeding chamber for a boss fight army down here. But one air conditioner by itself was not gonna cut it. And I was all out of electronics. And yes, I will make this better later when I need to breed an army, but for now, this'll do.
By the time you hear the scurrying claws of the deinonychus, it's often too late.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit nervous to start doing the caves because I'm in hardcore. There's like a billion ways I can die in there. But that's a problem for when the deinonychus are full-grown men. Because in the meantime, after witnessing a Bronto twerking on a blue drop, bro's throwing it down right now, I was still on the hunt for a megaraptor or an elderclaw, which is also a new creature and probably what I'm most excited about in this map, to be honest. He's literally a plant, by the way, and he looks amazing. But I have no idea where they spawn. But anyways, the only megaraptor that I found over here in the Chalk Hills was level 20. And after about 10 minutes, I had to head back to base because my imprint timer was ringing. Luckily, most of my children were grateful, and they just wanted cuddles and walks. But 2 of these spoiled brats decided that they would like some kibble. And I don't know who they think I am, but I'm not Gordon Ramsay.
And it looks like Gandhi's flip-flop.
So I tried to cryopod and reset the imprint request, but apparently they patched that glitch. Like every time, it just still says the same kibble now. I play so much Evolved, I didn't even know this was patched. And of course, the imprint was on the level 145. It's not a huge deal or anything, but it was definitely annoying. But anyways, while the boys were finishing their journey to becoming a man, day 21 began, and I spent my morning searching the redwoods for either a megaraptor or an elderclaw. I did not find any, but I did find this. Oh, that's a spider cave. Wait, no way. Is that a brood mother? Well, that's concerning. That spider cave has 2 artifacts inside, I'm pretty sure. But that means that we're gonna have to fight the literal brood mother just to get them. Yikes. But the Redwoods Castle was up ahead, and I was just kind of exploring, you know, as one will do. Is anyone home? But when I landed inside of their living room, I heard a very suspicious noise coming from the basement. Okay, I don't know what's going on down there, and I'd prefer not to find out. And in the Chalk Hills, I wasted another 20 minutes or so searching yet again for Mr. Megaraptor, but I didn't really find much. And as day 21 came to an end, I was about to give up when I finally saw this. Oh, he's level 130. The Megaraptor was reflecting like blue and purple, which looks super cool, but I'm not sure what that means. Bro's built like cotton candy. But I did know one thing. I couldn't afford to waste this opportunity. So I followed him around like a stalker, just waiting on his altar to spawn in. But it never did, because instead of that, bro decided it would be more fun just to sprint around wreaking havoc on the entire tri-state area, because it wasn't long before the dude randomly tried to fight a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And before I could even blink, Mr. Mega was super bloody, and he started running away. This was my last chance to save the Megaraptor, and while the Rex was distracted, I jumped in and tried to take him out. But unfortunately, the Megaraptor's final brain cell just expired, and he came running back for more. No, dude, why? And he left me a pair of cloth boots in his will. Gee, thanks, bro. But these Megaraptors just getting themselves deleted was getting really annoying. And I decided to get revenge, which took forever, by the way. How much health do you have? But anyways, there was enough of that for today, because it was time to get our first artifact. So I headed back to base. And this is exactly what I was talking about when I was talking about the fog earlier. Okay, so if you can't tell, this is what the game looks like without fog. It's terrible, right? And this is what it looks like when I add the fog back. How does that make sense? And half of the time, it's the complete opposite, by the way. So yeah, I basically am trying to change it every new area that I'm in, but sometimes I forget for a second, so it's weird, man. Just go with it. If it looks weird, I'm sorry. But now, after beefing with some fog, it was time to take on the first artifact kit. So I made a canteen and spent my entire life savings on like 5 deinonychus saddles, and I wanted to make sure that they all had some levels into their health, and that they'll all have saddles. Because if the squad dies, I'm probably gonna die with it, and we're not letting that happen. So I summoned the squadron, located the imprinted level 145, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Jerry. He's the manager. And we also have Barry, Carrie, Terry, Harry, Larry, and Tom, who will most likely not survive because he's only level 20. Sorry, Tom. And just like that, we now had some hot, and it only cost us the life of 2 of our inferiors. I kind of expected that though, to be fair, because the dude was level 20. But anyways, it was kind of fun just sprinting around with a pack of these guys because they're really fast, they can jump pretty high, and even though they aren't like amazing or anything, it was pretty cool. I might bring them to Aberration actually. So back at base, after pumping their health to over 1k each, I tested out their little wall climbing ability. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan. I don't like how you can't move while you're on the wall. Like there's so many creatures that can do that, but with these guys, you just have to hope it lets you jump again. But it's better than nothing, I guess. But while I was doing some base stuff, I realized that I had been neglecting one of my stepchildren this entire time. Oh, Optimus Prime, I forgot you existed, buddy. So I decided to make a saddle for him as well, because he is a decent level, he has a 700-inch vertical, and at the end of the day, Procoptodons are actually one of the best cave creatures in the game. So after spending like half of day 23 doing some chores around the base, just slaughtering time itself, everyone was pretty much healed up, and it was finally time to head out. Well, almost. Wait, can I make a Rex saddle now? I was over level 74, and I just needed some hide for the Rex saddle. So I turned to my neighbors. Hello, sir. May I borrow some hide? My neighbors are so generous. Okay, it was now time for our first artifact kit. And since I was on hardcore, I did some research. Shout out to this guy, by the way. But in that video that I just watched, I learned that there's 6 caves on this map with a total of 10 artifacts. And most of them are pretty difficult, to say the least. But one of the easier ones has an underwater tunnel, and I think that's probably the best place to start. So I crafted an oxygen tank inside of my bedroom, and I set out for, drumroll please, the Chalk Hills. Yeah, we're back here again, but the reason we were here is because over by these ruins, down into the ravine, with a little hint of purple, boom, artifact cave. Oh, there's degenerates in here. And now there's an aloe in there too. But this cave is brand new to the game, and I'm a bit less scared of this one because all of the other ones have serial killers inside. But anyways, after Mr. T removed several lives that day, we made it inside. And even though I could probably just keep using Mr. T in here, well, that's no fun. So I summoned Jerry and the goons, and I was expecting this cave to go pretty smooth. But after the first section, okay, I want to know which one of you was doing 4 damage in that last fight. Terry, you need to be executed, bro. As I continued along, and Terry continued having the privilege of life, the cave really opened up. And now, I wasn't sure where exactly to go. So I decided to turn left by the water, slaying 8-legged troglodytes along the way. And the big group in the next area went just as smooth as the first, although the level 300 scorpions are kinda scary. And I wasn't too worried at first because there weren't any bats in here. And everything was going pretty well, but then something happened. This guy showed up. If you aren't aware, Ark Valguero, in addition to being creepy, can remove all of your armor from simply spitting on you. Yeah, it's absolutely broken. But luckily, this guy was all alone, and we reigned victorious. For now. And at this point, the deinonychus were starting to send me some mixed messages, because Jerry was out here living his best life, absolutely carrying the goon squad, but some of our other members were not doing too hot. So after discovering buried treasure and hoarding all of the body parts of my victims, because I wasn't sure which tributes I needed for the boss fight yet, I forced a few hundred uncooked slices of raw troglodyte directly into the esophagus of Terry the deinonychus. And a few minutes later, everyone was healed up. All right, let's move on, boys. But the next area was even more insane, with multiple level 2 to 300 spiders, scorpions, And just when we barely made it out alive, a level 190 Ark bro showed up. Oh, this could be bad. Things were starting to get really scary because I just healed up and even Jerry is below half health already. Bro, that was demoralizing. But over in this little cavern area, I saw this doorway for hobbits. And just inside, there was something completely unexpected because Harry Otter himself was playing Dance Dance Revolution.
I got my hands on your body, so tell me what you want me to do.
But I must admit, they did have some pretty fire home decor. Full statue, bro. And inside Harry Otter's bedroom was a red cave drop. Oh, okay. 120 Rex saddle. The cave drop was actually kind of amazing, but now that I've invaded his home, crashed his dance party, and stole his Rex saddle, I think the dude has taken enough abuse for one day. But unfortunately for him, he had one more thing that I wanted. Okay, look, bro. It's a video game, and I need an otter. Watched as he ran directly into Jerry's chiseled jawline and repeated the process on his roommate. Look guys, I'm just babysitting this guy while his parents are on vacation inside Jerry's stomach. But anyways, now that I was finished with some questionable ethics, I continued through this water area which came out to a dead end. Okay, this must be the wrong way. I turned around, looped all the way past the original entrance, dodged some airborne spit. Sorry bro, but I'd prefer to keep my pants on. And long story short, we just did more of the same, slowly clearing the cave, healing up in between fights, and losing a couple members along the way. And it actually did take quite a while. But at the start of day 25, well, I still didn't find anything. Where is this tunnel at? But then I realized, wait, it's literally just underwater, isn't it? Yes, it was. So it was now time for Jerry's very first scuba diving lessons. And the lessons involved piranhas, apparently. But Jerry slayed this family of fish like a true professional. And I completed this challenge to farm 25 fish meat, which is a new skill tree mechanic as well, but I'll show you guys that later. Because after stopping for stamina, we headed down into the tunnel, and it was surprisingly empty at first. But when we reached the other side, some piranhas showed up. And shortly after that, so did something bigger. Oh no. Mr. T, help! That was close. But with the assistance of a Rex named Mr. T, we cleared the cavern pretty easily and lived on to see another day. Why is that man made of gold? And that kind of took a while, but the artifact of the Skylord has been secured. Alright, 1 down, 9 to go. But right before I could leave, I saw this Megalania. I didn't, however, see this other Megalania. Ow, yo! And it seems I've contracted the highly contagious Mega Rabies, but that right there is exactly why we have 400 health. And I survived pretty easily. And I am actually planning on going to 510 health because all fall damage is capped at 500 in this game, and I'd be able to survive at least the impact from any fall with that. But anyways, on the way back to my private island, I saw the level 25 megaraptor again. And I still want a higher level, of course, but I decided to try and tame him just to try it out. So I equipped the torch, approached his altar, apparently, and he didn't want to be challenged because he is out hunting. Fair enough. But as soon as he finished preying upon his victims, he changed up real fast. Oh, here we go. According to Syntac, this man is gonna try and jump scare me, but I have to hear him pop up and then boop him right on the forehead right before he eats my face. Sounds easy, right? Well, that's what I thought too. But what nobody told me was he can appear behind me. Oh, no, not like this. Everything feels so much more exhilarating in hardcore, and I don't think I like it. But yeah, that was kind of weird, and I'm not really sure how I'm even supposed to do that 52 times somehow without getting hit. I'll try again later though, because back at my prehistoric condo, I put the 120 armor OP Rex saddle on Mr. T's spinal cord. And I think from now on, I'm just gonna keep the 2 good deinonychus for a mate boost because I haven't seen any pack bonus for them on Ascended. I'm pretty sure they had it on Evolved. And also, Harry Otter is going down by the trough inside the dungeon until he can start acting like an adult. But now, it was time to check the obelisk for what we actually need to start the boss fight. And when I arrived, arrived, it was not at all what I expected. Allobrains, RG Talons, 2 Gigahearts, okay. Sarcoskin, Rex, Arms, Titanoboa, okay, yeah, that's not too bad. But then I noticed something. Wait a minute, why is there only 4 artifacts? Each difficulty only required 4 out of the 10 total artifacts. And of course, the one that I already have is for Gamma, not Alpha, which is what I was going for. Oh my. Dude, that just scared me so bad. But as I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted, I want to take on the Alpha Grendel, or whatever his new boss name is. He's a massive megaraptor, by the way. But since I want to 100% all of the caves in this run, I mean, I might as well do it on Beta and Gamma as well, since I'll have the artifacts, right? So we'll see about doing all 3. And on a side note, they removed the old boss fight from Evolved, the one that had like the triple bosses or whatever. And I kind of liked that one, but I haven't seen Grendel yet, so I can't judge how good it is just yet. But anyways, I was now on my way to the very part of this map that I'm the most excited for, and that is Aberration. And it wasn't long before we found ourselves directly above the entrance. There's no flyers allowed down here, so once you go in, you're not coming back out. And this first little waterfall section is right where we had our turret wall on PvP, like I was telling you guys about earlier, because people drop their soakers down, but then they can't like back the soakers out, they have to die. And then all the way down to the bottom here, there's a giant underground lake. And if you build a platform over this water, you can fit an entire end game base. It was legitimately unrateable back in the day on Evolve. But anyways, I'll stop nerding out about the PvP days, because the real reason we're here is this. Ladies and gentle soars, welcome to Aberration, my favorite map on all of Ark. Not only because it's filled with mushrooms and alien plants that like to get freaky, but after farming a quick stack of green gems for later and getting a free bear trap from this cave drop, I made it to the portal, the central hub of this map. And here's where it gets serious. But on Valguero's Aberration, I don't know why, maybe it's like a glitch since the map is still new or something, but the main river area around this pillar down here had almost no creatures spawning in. Where's all the crabs and spinos that want to murder me? Did they all go extinct already? But that doesn't matter where we're going, because we were heading to the red zone. Aberration on Valguero Ascended only has 1 artifact inside, and we can't actually reach it just yet, because it's all the way over in the back, where the very most dangerous creatures spawn, commonly referred to as the red zone. You can tell that it's the red zone because it has a slight hint of red, but I can't go down there right now, and let me show you why. That's why. The radiation is not very good for my health, but in order to survive in there, there was one thing we could do. We needed a hazard suit, and to make a hazard suit, we needed 2 main things: blue gems and congealed gas balls, both of which are very close to the red zone. The blue gems were easy peasy, but the congealed gas balls, on the other hand, were gonna be much more difficult. Why do these spikes that look like an alien's leg muscle give me berries? Anyways, before I could find any gas veins, well, I saw this level 135 bulb dog, and even though there are no nameless on this map, glow pets are still amazing for repelling any reapers down in the red zone. Well, they don't really repel, they just make them weaker. So I picked some aquatic mushrooms directly off their stalk, placed them somewhere between Mr. Bulb Dog's 2 vocal cords. He enjoyed it, of course. And since he kinda looks like a pug, I named him Doug. And it didn't take long for Doug the Pug and I to discover the source of a gas leak nearby. Oh, there's 3 of them things. And I now had a very important decision to make. I could stand here until the veins let one rip, or I could make a gas collector, which requires red gems. Okay, so I know where the red gems are on Aberration, but on Valguero, do they even exist outside the red zone? So after becoming a resident of Chernobyl, and I can't go that way, I wasted like 10 minutes just mindlessly wandering around until I finally decided to use this brand new invention called Google Search. And apparently, after casually ravaging someone's ankles, pun intended, so the blue gems that I mined earlier are supposed to have a few red ones mixed in, according to Google AI. But when I arrived, I didn't really see any. These are all blue, bro. And at this point, I was getting a little bit desperate, and I did something kind of stupid. Wait, maybe if I like jump over there, I can mine them off the wall or something? This was an absolutely terrible idea for more reasons than one, but that wasn't even the issue, because when I jumped up, well, this happened. Hello? I can't even move, dude. I was more boxed than an Amazon Prime delivery. And for a brief moment, I thought this was the end. Let me out. But then, as the radiation became stronger and stronger, it happened. That 10-second sauna experience just brought my health down to half. And I also have radiation sickness now, by the way. But after some extensive research, I realized that I have two options. The first option was to make a mushroom brew, because that helps you survive in the radiation. And option 2 is gamble with my life. And option 2 is obviously the better choice here, because gas collectors only require 20 red gems. And I'm not scared of a little radiation. So after spending 3 eternities waiting for my health to regenerate, day 28 began, and it was time to start some beef with the color red. Wish me luck, boys. Oh, okay. Well, that was...
I may be an idiot, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah, that was pretty stupid, but at least it was entertaining. Regardless of how we did it, we now have the red gems and 220 seconds of radiation poisoning. So with both of my life goals at completion, we could finally leave. I just had to be super careful because you can't heal while you have the radiation stuff. And on the way out, not much happened, but I did find this chitin chest piece that's better than my flag. And trying to climb on these guys is absolutely terrible, by the way, because you can't move while you're on the wall. Half the time it just knocks you down. So I am planning on taming a rock drake and maybe even a reaper when we hit the red zone. But anyways, I had to go all the way around while on the verge of over-encumberment, but after slowly crip walking past the yellow crystal, through the purple area, and past this giant rat, oh, there's a level 135 baby. I picked up a souvenir. Ratatouille. Okay, I have no idea how to spell that. Oh, I got it right. I should enter a spelling bee.
Iridocyclitis.
So that took an extended period of time, but I could finally head back to base. And on the way, I saw a bison. Okay, so before we resume here, I would just like to say that I never got the chance to play Ark Ascended. So this was my very first time actually seeing a bison. And that's why I assumed that they were friendly. I was wrong. So I summoned Mr. T, got dismounted, again, committed murder, and, well, I wasn't planning on adopting children today, but here we are, I guess. But anyways, on day 29, we made it back, and I needed some cementing paste for the gas collector so I could make a hazard suit for the red zone. So I demolished the water tank and the bunk bed, and manipulated Spike the trike into farming berries for our trough, so I could summon some baby vegans. But something wasn't quite right here. Wait, where's Harry Otter? Harry Otter had officially passed away. He starved to death? Because otters only eat fish meat. And I kind of forgot about that. My bad, bro. But at this point, I was getting pretty tired. Like, in real life, right? So I logged off for the night. And when I loaded up the next morning, I instinctually disabled fog again, which made my game look like this. Dude, why does it do that? It's so bad. I don't understand. But anyways, we were almost at day 30. And I think the pacing is pretty decent so far, but our main problem is the lack of firepower. Mr. T is basically all I have. So I decided to host 2 arranged marriages in the courtyard. You may mate with the bride. Because in this game, strength comes in numbers. And while they were doing that, it took a few minutes per egg. So in the meantime, I took Stephen Hawking on a business trip to the forest, where we destroyed several wildlife habitats with the sole purpose of creating a large crop plot. I might need these crops for later if I wanted to make veggie cakes for the boss fight. So I installed some flooring, failed to place it at the right angle. Okay, that's gonna bother me. Okay, what am I doing? And now with all 4 crop plots ready for growth, I decided to blackmail Spike the Trike into stealing some seeds from our front lawn. Alright, that should be all of them. And over by the garden, I finally got some use out of Mr. T's feces that I've been collecting. You always gotta keep a giant turd on standby, am I right? But anyways, now that everything was set, I decided that I had enough eggs for now. And on day 30, it was time to grow our army of Rexes and our army of Deinonychus. Because with all of these eggs, I could probably take on the Grendel boss on Gamma. I need better stuff for Alpha, but we'll worry about that later. But when I flew down on Stephen Hawking, because I was going to bring the raw meat he had into this trough, I was put in a very head-scratching situation. I'm just gonna act like that didn't happen, because 10 Rex and 10 Deinonychus eggs later, the incubation had begun, and it took a few minutes, but the Deinonychus began hatching first, and since both parents were pretty decent, all of these guys should be pretty decent as well. But the Rexes followed suit, and they were a completely different story. Well, first of all, we got like 3 sets of twins, but they're quite large, and I had to move them one by one to get them unstuck from their birthplace. But since one of the parents is like level 50, half of the bloodline had already been tainted, meaning most of these Rexes had absolutely abysmal stat distribution, and any one of these guys without the good health in melee was immediately placed inside of a Pokeball for further evaluation. But luckily, out of all of that, there were 5 sole survivors with both the good health and the good melee. And why did I call them survivors, you might ask? Well, my sweet summer child, the baby Rexes in these cryopods, let's just say they're worth a pretty large amount of experience points. But now that I was waiting on the imprint timer, I couldn't really go too far away from my base, so I took a quick trip to the Red Obelisk to make some more cryopods. And when I made my return, about 15 minutes later, the imprints were awaiting. Most of these guys just wanted cuddles and walks, which I happily could give, and the Deinonychus hit 100% in their first imprint, which is pretty awesome. But the Rex, on the other hand, they get 33% each time, meaning I have no room for error because I have to get 3 imprints before they hit 100% to grow up. That's kind of annoying. So when the Deinonychus finished high school, I spent like 5 minutes forming a single file line in the courtyard for level, and since I can't really leave, I then went AFK. I almost messed up pretty bad, because when I came back, to my surprise, the Rexes were all starved, probably because I haven't fed them in 4 days, but I had to act fast. But luckily, Stephen Hawking really stepped up to the plate here, because he made a quick trip to the prehistoric Walmart to purchase some grass-fed stego. Alright, should be good. And the second imprints came shortly after that, and this time 2 of the Rexes wanted kibble. You greedy little reptile. I don't have any kibble, so only 3 of the Rexes still had a potential 100%. So I just farmed some hide while waiting because I know I'll need that later for saddles or something. And after being in base for over an hour, the final imprints were among us. A cuddle and a walk. I now had 3 100% imprinted Rexes, but they're now 97% raised after the 3rd imprint, meaning I had absolute 0 room for error. But anyways, I'm finally allowed to leave my house, just like when quarantine was over, and the Deinonychus army was now ready. So I started swinging a sickle inside my backyard for some fiber, made 10 Deinonychus saddles, and all that was left to turn my crew into a professional cave guy. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. I needed to level the Deinonychus, and I know just where to get the XP. So after spending an overly excessive amount of time throwing things out of cryopods, putting different things into cryopods, and then throwing those things out of cryopods once again, the crime scene was set. And it was now time for a morally questionable level montage. Get 'em, boys. And that, ladies and gentle soars, is the most efficient way to level your tames in this game. But it was time to secure that next artifact, because I'm going for the Gamma Grendel boss by day 50. But first, after crafting some more cementing paste to finally make that gas collector, I needed to make a quick stop to the underworld. What did you do to that poor tree? It was, quite uneventful. But I would like to announce that I am now a proud owner of a brand new Taco Bell. You get it? Because it collects gas? I'm sorry. But getting the 120-ish gas balls for the hazard suit was gonna take at least an hour. So we're gonna come back here later, because the next stop was what was notoriously known as the Button Cave. And if you're wondering why it's called the Button Cave, well, so is this fella. Because at first glance, there isn't even a cave here. In fact, it's just a giant wall. But over on the side of the ruins, there's a secret button. And that wall is actually a door. But once we were inside, this cave, well, it's super cool, but it's also kind of terrifying. Imagine being under there when it closes. And by the way, I'm using this new Deinonychus because he's actually imprinted, unlike Jerry. But anyways, when you reach the back area of these ruins, there's like an open spot where you could theoretically build a base, I guess. But behind that is the cave. Now, you would think that I should jump over this broken bridge, right? But there's actually nothing here because we have to go down. And once I do, there's no turning back. As I submerged under the water, the moment I peeked my head, my stomach dropped because this cave has bats. A lot of bats. So I tried to stay underwater to kind of cheese their hits, and it was working at first, but my deinonychus was getting dangerously low on stamina, and bats hit extremely hard. I had to do something, so I decided to just make a run for it, and it worked. Almost. Because just around the corner, I found this. Oh, nope. I was cornered, and the only two options were a sociopath with legs and 15 sociopaths with wings. We're gonna need some backup. Batman and his buddies have been deleted, and the only thing left of them is this jawbone and someone's femur that I'm keeping for scientific purposes. But as I continued through the next tunnel, having no idea where I was going, I noticed that my squad seemed a few members short, and then when I turned around, I figured out why. Oh, they're gonna die. I ran as fast as I can, not knowing what to expect. But when I arrived, I found myself in a front row seat in a 3v3 cage match against 3 saliva slingers. These guys were not messing around, and one by one, my deinonychus were getting dangerously low on health, until eventually, oh, we just lost one. But we made it out, and everyone else was still alive. So I put them in their Pokeballs, and it was time to continue on. The fact that I can't turn back in this cave, and I'm forced to finish, is kind of terrifying. But if we took it very slow, clearing one section at a time, taking several lunch breaks along the way to heal up. All right, buddy, I'm just gonna place 20,000 calories of this raw caveman into your digestive tract real quick. We might just pull this off. And it wasn't long until we came across the ruins. Hey, yo!
You're a wizard, Harry.
But anyways, after committing a mass extinction event on the scum of our society, the ruins here had giant heads as statues. Interesting design choice, by the way. And the artifact was supposed to be right here in the middle, right? But in true Ark fashion, the map is a little bit glitchy. And I'm gonna have to use cheats just to show you guys what I mean, so yeah. Okay, so when I ghost into the floor right here below me, yeah, there's the artifact. Thanks, Reddit. And just like that, the artifact of the brute has been secured. And if I see one comment saying that I cheated for ghosting into the floor when the artifact is in the floor, you know what, you're right, the run's invalidated. But anyways, that's not the end of this cave. Because if you head back to the crossroads, take a left, and mine this oversized rock, there's a secret passage. And on the other side, oh my, there was an entire squad of low IQ individuals. So I just started yeeting Pokeballs into a pile of warfare, and when we made it all the way inside, we lost another member of our crew. Why are there so many bats in here? But after clearing the area, there was an underwater tunnel on the other side. So we suited up, went underwater for approximately 3 seconds. Wow, I did not need a scuba tank for that. And came out to the final boss of this cave. Because in this area, the spikes below are actually a death barrier. Meaning if I fall, the game will just instantly deal like 1,000 damage and make me die. And then the entire hardcore run would be over. I probably should have brought grapples in hindsight, but there's nothing we can do about that now. All we can do is hope to survive. And step 1 was using the low IQ of our enemies to our advantage. Have fun down there. And this method should work on all of the land creatures, but the bats on the other wing were a whole different story. Oh no, he has rabies! The mega rabies that I contracted from that bat was slowly removing my life. But we managed to make it out with about half health, and at this point, I was getting pretty worried. I didn't want to spawn the army of deinonychus with all these ledges everywhere because they could just fall off. But when I jumped across, oh no. Oh no, I had no other choice. I don't know which deinonychus I just hurled towards Batman, but he low-key might die today. So I threw a few more to help out to try to save the first one, but I couldn't afford to get involved myself because Batman has mega rabies. Luckily, everybody ended up surviving. Barely. Well, almost. Because as the mega rabies timer ticked down, so did my health. And when the timer finally ran out, I have 40 health, bro. I was about 20 seconds away from the end of my hardcore run right there. Bro, I am shaking right now. But the end of the cave was near. Because after sending my minions to do the dirty work, the artifact was up on this ledge ahead. I just had to make it over there. And that's the sketchy part. Wish me luck, boys. Please let me drop straight. Okay. And just like that, we made it. Well, kind of. Because I soon came to the realization that I cannot get this artifact of the Devourer. Wait, it's over by the yellow crystal. That's like directly above the death barrier, bro. And maybe I'm just bad, but climbing on this deinonychus is nowhere near reliable enough for me to want to risk my life doing that. But there was still hope. Because, I mean, do I actually know that this is a death barrier? So just to make sure, I needed a volunteer. And luckily for me, I found one. Alright, Doug the Pug, this is your moment, buddy. All your time on this earth, all your time on my shoulder, it all leads up to this. If you survive today, you're no longer going to be a shoulder pug. You're going to graduate to a shoulder legend. And if you perish via instant death barrier from Ark's netcode, well, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And rest assured, you'll live on in our hearts, at least for the next hour or so. So go get him, Tiger. Oh, I think there's a death barrier. My bad, bro. Doug the Pug has died today, but that did not fix my problem. So therefore, he will not live on in our hearts. But I did know one thing. I really needed some grapples. And we're gonna have to come back later when I make some. Okay, so how do I get out of here? And across this little gap right here was a little puddle of water. Okay, why is there a random ammonite here? And one scuba tank and a few minutes of vertical swimming later, we made it to the top, which looked like a dead end at first glance. But over on this wall was another hidden button, which opened a one-way door back into those ruins that I said you could build a base at the start of the cave. And as soon as I find this button, we can finally get out of here. There is a button, right? Right? Okay, this isn't even funny anymore. Where's the button? Oh, there. Bro, that thing is invisible. And even though we're gonna have to go back in here for the Devourer artifact later, I'm just happy that I made it out of there alive. And from now on, I need to start being more prepared for things because, like, day 35 on hardcore, yeah, if I die, I'm gonna be so bad. But anyways, we couldn't head home just yet because on the way back, I had to make a quick pit stop. And by quick, I mean I spent 10 minutes just straight running down this tunnel because it was time to pass gas. From the collector to my inventory, of course. What did you think I meant? But to my surprise, there were only 79 in here so far, and I needed about 125. This thing is making them pretty fast, so I'm not really sure why it's not already there yet, but while I was waiting, I decided to be productive. And I tamed Doug the Pug Jr., because the OG Doug the Pug is in the Shadow Realm right now. Good luck, buddy. But at this point, the gas collector still needs 30 more balls. This is taking forever, and I didn't want to have to come all the way back down here, so to kill some time, I took my very first look at a brand new feature that was just added to the game. And it's this red tab on the very right side of the inventory. Here you can find a skill tree, and it's from the Lost Colony DLC pass. And that's where these challenges that you've been seeing are from. I have 4 of them done right now, but you need to complete an entire column to actually complete the skill points. But when you do, you can use them to unlock all of these brand new abilities, and the first ones are kind of basic. But as you branch out further on the skill tree, well, some of them just seem kind of crazy. Here, let's read this one together. Spectral Mount. Active ability. For the next 15 seconds, your mount becomes spectral. It cannot be targeted by wild creatures, ignores all stamina costs, and you cannot be dismounted. That sounds amazing. But anyways, I just spent 10 minutes reading the lore, and there were a few more gas balls in our collector. Oh no, I'm drowning. Oh, sorry about that. The other 2 items from the Lost Colony expansion pass are this template hammer and the tech bunker. The tech bunker is kind of like an actual underground base, but that thing be expensive. And the template hammer, well, I want to show you that one when we get back base because it's pretty cool. And by the way, let me know in the comments when Lost Colony drops in December, should I do another hardcore vanilla 100 days or would you rather see like something else? But anyways, the time has finally come because with 125 gas balls, I could finally leave the underground society. And back at my castle-like abode, we now had 1 artifact of the Brute and 1 less pug named Doug. And the only thing left to do for the hazard suit was get some organic polymer. And there's a pretty easy solution to that problem. Hello, sir. The hazard suit was ready to be radiated. And I also made 10 grapples so I can get that artifact of the Devourer from the button cave that we just missed earlier. But since I just promised that I was going to show you guys this template tool at base, let's take a again. If you guys haven't seen this thing yet, you're going to absolutely love it, especially if you suck at building. So basically, you can save any structure you make as a layout to remake it later, which is pretty useful. But there's also some presets, kind of like this starter base, or like this medieval castle, or even a wasteland arena. And you can can also download ones that other people make in the community. You still need to grind the materials to fill in and make the base, of course, but yeah, it's actually so sick. And if I have an extra 5 days or something, I'm probably gonna try to make that Viking longhouse. But anyways, I'm technically ready to take on the Aberration Red Zone, but I keep going in caves, and I kind of just want to take a break from caves right now. So once again, we're back in the Chalk Hills because I really want to tame a megaraptor. Unfortunately though, these guys still don't exist. I'm not really sure why they're so hard to find a high level of, but I did hear from this website called Reddit that they also spawn in the redwoods, and it turns out they definitely do. Level 15. Why are they always terrible? But my luck was about to start picking up because after finding this level 130 Gigantopithecus, thanks for the orphan, I was hugging the southern mountain part of the redwoods when I came across this lake. And for the very first time on this map, I found this. Oh, it's an elderclaw and he's level 150. I've been super excited to try these guys out ever since I even started the map. But first, we're gonna have to tame them. And in order to tame these guys, well, you just have to execute them. And that's where Mr. T comes in. Mr. T is pretty OP, and the elderclaw was not doing very much damage, but that's because he's mainly like a support dino, and you'll see why later. But despite Mr. T doing like 400 damage, this man has a lot of health, and about 5,000 damage from Mr. T's dentures later, Mr. Elderclaw was down. And this is where it gets pretty interesting, because first of all, he was made up of mushrooms and dandelions.
Oh, look! A dandelion.
But more importantly, he drops this wild elderclaw seed, which I have to grow in my crop plots. Yeah, the dude's literally a plant. So I needed to head home and prepare him for harvest. But nightfall was slowly approaching, and after exploring this giant purple crystal thing, I spent the rest of the night looping around the redwoods. Level 20, Until eventually, at the start of day 38, I found the American Weapons Reserve in a red supply drop. Oh, this drop is loaded. But also, over in the northern redwoods, I found this. Oh, finally. This took so much longer to find than it should have, and I really couldn't afford to mess it up. So after repairing my torch, I attempted, unsuccessfully, to declare all of the distractions in the area. But every time I erased someone from existence, the megaraptor just sprinted away and started hunting someone else. At one point, that someone else was me, by the way. And at this point, as long as it's safe with no carnos, I was ready to just full send it. But there was one major problem. His altar was not spawning again. So I spectated as this mega iPad kid put a mere moral in a spin cycle while begging to the Ark gods that an altar would manifest itself in front of me, but that never happened. Did that man just double jump? I sat here for over 20 minutes, and I even tried flying out of render to see if that would reset his altar, and then I did it again, but this time up. And I even tried searching in more unorthodox locations. Hello there. It's definitely not in there. But something was clearly wrong. The altar just would not spawn, just like the one from earlier. And I had to search for another one, which is why the next hour or so of gameplay was incredibly boring. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. And halfway through day 39, it finally happened. Oh, there's a 150. Please have it. He has an altar. It was time to 1v1 the most annoying tame in this entire game. Because this taming method for a megaraptor, well, it takes way too long. And you have to fully lock in focus the entire time, cranking up your sound, reacting at the speed of a light to this man spawning from the Aether. And that wouldn't be so bad on its own, except that you have to do it 50 times. And it gets worse. Because when I entered this fight, I didn't bring any backup flak armor. And each and every time that I failed to react fast enough and bonk this dude on his nose, he hits me. And each time that happens, my armor slowly wears down. Luckily, I did figure out that he always spawns behind me. So I came up with this method of walking backwards in circles so I never have to actually turn. It was working pretty well, but sometimes the dude hits me before he even spawns in. And the odds of this working out at this point were getting very slim, to be honest. Because despite my best efforts and over 75 torpor after I hit the dude like 30 times, well, it finally happened. Oh, this is really bad. Because now I was no longer wearing pants. And my odds of success were pretty small. But despite that, I didn't want to quit yet. Because if I could avoid getting hit, this could still work. But it didn't matter what I wanted to do. Because then the game just randomly kicked me out of the taming. Why did... Oh, no. Oh my gosh. That was super close. And a complete waste of 18 minutes that I was in that minigame, by the way. Not to mention the hour it took to find that dude. But now I know that next time I need to bring backup flak armor. Bro, that was actually the most infuriating taming mechanic I've had on this game. Like, I have to be fully alert for like 20 minutes and it's not even enjoyable. I guess if I had flak and I'd get hit more. But this guy better be good. Anyways, I arrived back in my base. And after repairing my flak armor and summoning a juvenile Harambe in my basement, it was time for something new. And it all started with planting a seed. If you haven't seen anyone raise an elderclaw yet, basically you need a greenhouse and you gotta raise it in the crop plot. And to make a greenhouse, I was gonna need some cementing paste. And to get some cementing paste, we had to head to the east side of the map, because this lake around the ruins is home to the entire family lineage of Mr. Beaver. Hey buddy, I apologize in advance for ruining your life. And Mr. Beaver had a family of 19, but that didn't stop me from stealing from his retirement account, because this man had almost 200 cementing paste inside. And by the way, public service announcement, always drop the wood from beaver dams, thank you. But the authorities were soon alerted, and it didn't take long for the entire population of beaver to become very upset by my action. Luckily for them, however, it's not possible to be upset if you're no longer alive. And yeah, we got our cementing paste, which was just enough for 8 greenhouse walls. And after farming some more crystal over in the redwoods, we had everything that we needed. And the final piece of the puzzle was just one large crop plot. But in true Ark fashion, it's never that easy. Because even after picking up all the walls, it was still obstructed on this little castle balcony thing. So I had to put it in the other corner, move the door. Alright, Tiny Cherry, you're going to the neglect zone. And finally, the greenhouse was ready for harvest season. And if you don't know how this works, you need at least a 2x3 sized greenhouse for the full 300% greenhouse effect. Which basically just means that you get 3 times the speed on your crop growth. And of course, you can grow elderclaws, which require up to 6 different resources for maximum taming effectiveness, including sap, giant bee honey, black pearls, biotoxin, ammonite bile, and leech blood. And I have exactly 2 of those. And I was gonna try and like have everything ready to feed the dude, but you know what? I don't have time for all that. And just like that, the elderclaw was now, planted inside the dirt, I guess. And after admiring his blossom, I took a closer look. And apparently you have to make this shovel, which increases growth speed and unlocks higher taming effectiveness when you like tend the crop lot. And now that this man was all settled into his soil, the very first thing that he wants for lunch is the blood of my mortal enemy. Leech blood? So I guess we're heading to the swamp. When I arrived in Shrek's hometown, there was a brother unhinging his jaw. But instead of finding a leech, I ended up getting gunned down in the streets by an oversized mosquito. Leave me alone! But when I finally came back for round 2, I located the leech man, convinced him to donate some blood, and gave a blood transfusion to a very greedy houseplant. And now he wants black pearls. The only item on this entire list that I have no easy method of getting. I can't go in the water because I have no water tames. But there was one other place on this map that actually does have black pearls. And I wasn't planning on doing it yet, but I think it might be time for the red zone. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty worried about this, because the rock drakes were one thing, but there's reapers down there too. And if my hazard suit breaks, the entire hardcore run would be over. And since I'm going in here anyways, I had 3 main goals. First of all, I needed some black pearls for my greedy houseplant. Next, I needed a rock drake egg so I could retire Jerry here. And finally, the artifact of the gatekeeper for the alpha boss fight is all the way in the back, and we need to find that as well. And despite me not being exactly prepared, it was time for the riskiest mission that we've done yet. All right, let's do it. As I slowly entered the red zone, the very first thing I saw was a Reaper Queen. Oh, why is she right here? And my first instinct was to run, but this woman was faster than Usain Bolt with the appetite of Jeffrey Dahmer. And with no other option, I was forced to fight. For the first few seconds, we actually had a 2v1, as a Featherlight came in and used the glow effect, helping me deal more damage. But that didn't last very long because she executed that man. And with no glow pet, Mr. T was doing a measly 30 damage per hit. I'm not sure why Doug the Pug wasn't on, but I clapped my hands together, that man got lit. And it wasn't long until Mr. T finished the job. But as her corpse exploded and attempted to murder me, there was something that I didn't even realize until right now. I don't have any aberrant creatures. So even though I'm safe with my hazard suit on, Mr. T is still taking radiation. He does have like 30k health though, so he's probably fine. But that does mean there's no time to waste. And as I descended into the Rock Drake Scar, well, I saw Mr. Krabs and the degenerates, but I also saw some black pearls. So I headed down, placed a metric ton of pearls into my pocket, found the cousin of a deceased Reaper, shredded her and stole her pheromone, found the children of a rock named Drake, kidnapped them, and I soon found myself at the Purple River. No, I will not be drinking the death water, but apparently this is the wrong side of the scar. But all the way over on the other side of the scar, right next to Drake, whose hotline will no longer bling, was the artifact of the Gatekeeper. Alright, let's get out of here. When I made it back into the green zone, Mr. T was down to 15k health. And overall, I'd say that went pretty well. Also, he had like 10,000 seconds of radiation left or something. But if you cryo the dude, the effect just goes away. And now I just needed to make it back to base. But I may have not thought this through all the way. Because black pearls weigh more than Mr. T's mother. And I brought a Pteranodon. There's no way terabytes carrying more than like 9 or 10. But luckily, I only need one for the elderclaw. So I just dropped 100 right in the middle of the forest. But anyways, I was heading along the river to make it back, right? And the crabs were actually spawning here now, which I didn't think much of at the time. And I completely forgot that they can just grab you right off of your tent. Oh no, okay, this is bad. I don't even know how I found myself in this situation, but with Mr. Krabs' claw directly around my pelvis, my armor began to break. Put me down, bro! And as my life flashed before my eyes, I thought this might be it. Death by the hand of a greedy capitalist.
Hello, I like money.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money.
But in the end, I didn't die, because with the help of Mr. T, Mr. Krabs did. What a loser. But anyways, I returned to my humble abode to find a houseplant that no longer wants black pearls. And now he wants ammonite bile. Okay, I actually do have that. And then 5 seconds later, he wanted black pearls again. Okay then. So I spent the rest of day 44 just doing some chores around my base, feeding my houseplant some more black pearls and ammonite bile per his request. And once he became mid, he began craving some biotoxin, which should be pretty easy, right? It's just a jellyfish. But for some reason, jellyfish are kind of rare on this map. Jellyfish are very rare on this map. I think jellyfish don't spawn on this map. I searched the entire ocean twice. And with a heavy heart, I regret to inform everybody watching this video that jellyfish have gone extinct. Yeah, I actually just flew around for 40 minutes and there's not a single one on the map. And at this point, the imprint has already changed back to leech blood, so yeah. But the leech blood wasn't enough for this man, because for his 18th meal of the day, he was now craving giant bee honey. And this is getting really repetitive at this point, but there's something actually wrong on this map. Because first of all, it was jellyfish, and now it's the beehives. Because I searched the mountains, the cliffs, and the entire redwoods in the trees, and even after I did a dino wipe and then kind of looked around for another 15 minutes, I didn't find one single beehive. So I really hate to do this, but I just decided to spawn in a couple of honey so I can actually tame the dude. And a few honey, some ammonite bile, leech blooder, and a few honey, ammonite bile, leech blood, and sap later. The elderclaw was ready for harvest. And even though I was like an hour late on 2 of the feeds, he still somehow got 100% effectiveness. So I think you just have to eventually give him the stuff and it's fine. But anyways, I dropped him off with a babysitter named Harambe, fed him some berries, which is low-key cannibalism, and named him Groot, who had exactly 13 minutes to imprint. So while I was waiting on that, I just remembered something about this map. Oh wait, isn't there's a wyvern scar in the snow, right? I've been sitting here using a PT with 200 weight for 46 days, when I could have just been using a mythical beast. But on Valguero, these weren't just normal wyverns, because over in the northeast corner of the snow is the Ice Scar, home of the Ice Wyvern. These guys were swarming outside of their house, and there's also a little cave down there into a giant fire wyvern trench. But that's super dangerous without already having a wyvern, and I'm not gonna take that type of risk while playing on hardcore. So we're going for the ice one first. I started out by kind of scouting from above, being super careful not to alert the authorities, but for some reason, I didn't see any nests down there. I wasn't just gonna leave without seeing for myself though, and when I saw an opening, I decided to take it. And I'm really glad that I did, because all the way down in the trench, I saw some eggs. Level 55. And it wasn't worth risking my existence in life for a level 55, but the nest below had this. Oh, 185. Now, this one was worth it. So I summoned my bodyguard named Mr. T, put Terabyte in a Pokeball, and committed a felony crime. It didn't take long until the brothers were alerted. And it was now time for Mr. T's daily jaw workout. Well, that was easy. The ice wyvern species has been terminated, or so I thought, because on the way out, I had a 5-star wanted level.
The police, they are after me.
But their efforts were futile, because I was just too fast. And it wasn't long before I made it back to Baby Groot right on time. Oh, that was like perfect. My walking plant wanted to go for a walk, but unfortunately for him, his 3 brain cells were in disagreement on how exactly to do that. Bro, the door is right there. Groot's walk lasted about 6 seconds, and his imprint went straight to 100%, which I was not expecting. But now, all that was left to do was wait, and I was super excited. But while I was waiting, it was time to hatch the newest recruit to our team. And despite him physically being made of ice, somehow the egg was too cold, and he wanted more torches. How are you cold, bro? You're literally a snowman. So I crafted some torches, lumberjacked some wood, and about 15 torches later, the dude was finally satisfied with the warmth of the room. Don't get mad at me if you melt in there. And it took a few minutes, but when he finally entered this world, I decided to name him Igloo, and we had about 15 minutes for his imprint as well. So in the meantime, I was admiring our adolescent named Groot, who was looking very intimidating with his mushroom kneecaps, but when I opened his inventory, I was met with the greatest stat line in plant bear history. 8,000 health and 600 melee. That's after imprint, but that's still insane. But we still had some time before Igloo was ready to imprint, and I wasn't really sure what to do with 15 minutes, so I grabbed my 2 treasure maps that I found earlier, revealed them on the map, and what I found next was highly disappointing, because all the way in the snow, underneath the water in this frozen lake for some reason, was the Ascendant treasure chest with an electric prod inside. Wow, thanks man. And the other treasure map over here in the forest had a 400 armor Ascendant piece of grass. Classy. Anyways, back at my island, Igloo was craving for a cuddle, but it seems that his imprints only give about 33% each time. And I am a little bit less concerned with his stats, so if I get 66 from that, I think that's okay, because I still needed the artifact of the Devourer. That's the one we missed in the button cave. And since we've already been through here before, I'm just gonna skip past most of this stuff. But after I swam through the water tunnel, when I reached the final artifact chamber, I was met with 2 very familiar faces. Wait, Jerry? Somehow I forgot to bring Jerry back home last time. And I think that might be why there's no bats inside this artifact chamber, which was kind of nice to be honest. But anyways, it was time for the main event. And it only took 2 grapples before I reached the artifact. And that was pretty easy. But the next part of this cave was the water tunnel. And guess who forgot their scuba? Oh, why are there Eurypterids in here? There was no way I was surviving in that tunnel, even if there weren't Eurypterids in there. So I just went all the way back the way I came, back to the entrance, where I launched a grapple into the heavens, and Ark Survival Ascended back into the ruins. Alright, let's get out of here. On day 49, Igloo wanted to go for a long walk on the beach, but after some negotiation, we settled for a short walk inside the prison courtyard. But day 50 was quickly approaching, and I now had the artifact of the Brute, Gatekeeper, Skylord, and Devourer, meaning I still needed the Crag and Destroyer for Alpha, the Cunning, Immune, and Strong for Beta, and finally, the artifact of the Pack to take on Gamma Grendel. And with 5 Rexes, 10 Deinonychus, and Groot here, I think I was pretty much ready. But the the artifact of the pack is inside the Redwoods cave, the very same one with a literal broodmother inside. So with that, I now had two major goals. First of all, it was about time we tame a megaraptor. And second of all, we need to find a way to get the artifact without disturbing the broodmother. But before all of that, we were in the Chalk Hills right next to Mr. T's trap house, because it was time for the moment I've been waiting for this entire run. We're about to test the elderclaw, and I really hope he's good because I had to pay money just to be allowed to tame him. And the first thing I noticed was that in his inventory, he has a 40 armor natural saddle, which is decent, but I don't like how you can't upgrade it. But there were also these three icons on my screen, and I have no idea what they do. First of all, Groot's basic attack did about 300 damage, unleveled by the way. He also has this left trigger lunge jump thing, which does about 400 damage, and clicking down on the right stick will lock your victims into an environmentally friendly prison. Oh, it like trapped him. And that root trap thing was the middle ability on the ability bar, but I couldn't figure out which button does the one on the left. Oh no, friendly fire. At this point, I had pressed every button on my controller, and I even started doing combo moves like I was entering a cheat code in 2005. But eventually, I figured it out, because the left bumper and the right stick at the same time activates this spirit token, and you'll see what that does in a minute, because right bumper and the left trigger at the same time activates the bark shield, which made this Bronto only do 10 damage to me per hit. And I wasn't exactly sure what the spirit token thing was doing at the time, but it was buffing my damage, because every time I hit the Bronto while he was in this circle, the counter thing on the top right kept increasing on my buff bar, and anything in this circle will increase in their damage. So I decided to level this man's health to about 20k so he could play a support role in the Grendel boss fight. And now I just needed a megaraptor to fight by his side. But of course, all the megaraptors in the Chalk Hills were complete and utter garbage. And like I was saying before, finding these guys was really time consuming because they're kind of rare, but I was still determined. And as the hours passed, day 50 began, and I had searched all the way around the Chalk Hills and moved to the forest area at this point. And that's where I found him. Oh, there's another one. 145. Whew, all right, we gotta get this guy. But after landing for stamina, I noticed that the megaraptor was assaulting a young stego, and its parents were assaulting him. Oh no, he's stupid. I tried to step in by summoning Mr. T to save this mentally deficient specimen, and I did manage to break up the fight, but then he aggroed me. Bro, really? I just saved your life, man. And this was actually really good, because I could just kite him away from the stego, and that's exactly what I did until this happened. What? No! Mr. T just stepped on that man's forehead, and I was now all the way back to square one. Why are these guys so stupid? I'm sure you guys are just as tired of me searching for a megaraptor as I am at this point, and I've probably spent like 3 hours total in this video so far. They're always level 20. But that was all about to change, because on day 51, right below the Redwoods Castle, a level 135 megaraptor was lurking. And this time, I was prepared. With 5 torches and a backup set of flak, all of my pain and suffering was finally about to pay off. Well, at least I hope so. After 17 grueling minutes of torturing that man, he was down, and that was incredibly annoying. It took almost the entire day. And I do wish that he was higher than level 135, but at this point, I'm just taking whatever I can get. So after repairing my torches, I made the executive decision that I'm not letting this man out of my sight. And about 15 minutes of standing on top of his kidney later, he was tamed. And there was absolutely no shot that I was finding another high-level megaraptor anytime soon. But I did want to breed more of these guys to use in the boss fight. So I headed back to the Chalk Hills, found this low-level male. Wait, no, I need a female. Found this low-level female, cleared the premises, and began the trial by fire. The level 20 was going to be a lot easier than the 135, and if you couldn't tell during that last fight, I really started to get it figured out. Standing still is actually easier than going in circles, but with one really big disclaimer: you need to crank up those headphones, because I was listening to music earlier, and that made it almost impossible for me to react. And in the fight earlier, I could kind of cheat a little bit, because sometimes I'd see the bush move before he even spawned in. But since this level 20 was so much easier than the 135, it really wasn't too bad. And if the higher levels did this much torpor per hit, I honestly think it would just be so much more enjoyable. It's just that it takes so long. But anyways, after she began her sleep therapy, I fed her this random Diplo, and it wasn't long before she joined the dark side. And back at base, I summoned the new recruits in my basement dungeon, because after borrowing some hide from this generous Bronto to make a megaraptor saddle, I leveled the high level one's health a little bit, which is pretty terrible by the way, and I named him Nightmare. But that was a lot of work just to get this guy, and it was time to see if all of that effort was actually working. So now that Igloo was finished raising, well, first of all, he desperately needed a sandwich. So after sending a mere mortal to the North Pole, it was time for Nightmare's damage test. The basic attack did about 160 damage, and the left trigger marks people to hunt them, which makes them like glow green so I can see where they are through walls and stuff. And finally, when I click down on the right stick, he does this. Wow, that was kind of pathetic. He also has this camo ability, which I think is making me invisible. And finally, he can double jump. Rose of Jedi. And if you click down on the right stick during his double jump, he can pounce like this. That did like nothing. Overall, I think I just got scammed because this man is nowhere near as good as how annoying he is to tame. But we're gonna breed them anyways because it should make the fight a lot more interesting to say the least, and we still have Groot here to carry the team. I spent my morning on day 54 breeding the megaraptors while doing some research on the side because I needed to find the final artifact for the Gamma fight, and the spider cave is just like the swamp cave on the island, meaning I need a gas mask to survive. And since I don't have a chemistry bench, I decided to just go for a scuba tank instead. But the problem with that is that you need the entire scuba outfit because somehow scuba flippers make it where you can breathe. And for that, I needed some more silica pearls. So I took a quick trip through the tundra and into Igloo's hometown, where half of the lakes had no pearls for some reason, but eventually we found one that did. And now that day 55 was upon us, it was time to pause the Megaraptor Egg Factory. Steven, I need you to hold something for me. And after some crystallized activities, I had 2 sets of scuba with 3 scuba tanks, just in case my armor breaks for some reason. But that's enough talking, because it was time to take some action. And to be completely honest, I was terrified, because there's 3 artifacts in this cave and 1 giant spider. But for Gamma, I did only need the artifact of the pack. So my goal was to not get lost, sneak past your mother, grab the artifact, which is the easiest one in here by far, and get out before we get caught. Wait, is that a Rex they got tied up in there? Okay, that actually looks pretty cool. But there's no way I'm just walking straight through the front door. At least not yet. Because if I fly around to the edge, straight down into the cave like this, the broodmother didn't even know that I was in her living room. And I am going to have to fight them later because this cave is huge and it's like a labyrinth with 3 artifacts all spaced out inside. But my only goal right now is the artifact of the pack. And to get there, you just have to stick to this right wall and try not to get lost. It's a bit easier said than done. And it took a minute, and at one point the tunnel got so tight that I had to swap Groot out Jerry. But eventually we came to this underwater passage. Good thing I'm already wearing scuba. The underwater section of this cave consisted of 1 singular piranha that relentlessly assaulted my toenail. And on the other side, we had arrived at our destination, and the artifact of the pack has officially been secured. Honestly, that was pretty easy, and there are still 2 more artifacts in here, like I was saying, that are going to be much harder, but we'll come back for that later. Because it was finally almost time to take on Gamma Grendel, the first and easiest boss in this map. And the only thing left to do was prepare the army. So I spent a little bit of time organizing the base and putting the deinonychus lined up inside the dungeon, and I put the Rexes lined up outside, where I leveled all of their health to 30k using the levels that they earned from doing nothing for 20 days. And once I had them all lined up, I was trying to find a boss Rex male so I could breed them, but somehow every single one of the boss Rexes with the good stats was a female. The only male I even had was Mr. T's lover here, who, by the way, Mr. T is a female apparently, and her lover is a male. Somehow I didn't even notice that. But like I was saying, the odds of 5 babies, all 5 babies being a a female, is 0.5 to the power of 5, which equals 3.125%. So you're telling me I wasted all my luck for the year on 5 virtual prehistoric females. But anyways, the reason I'm setting all this up is because I plan on using Mr. T's lover and his 6 high-level wives to breed Rexes for the Alpha boss fight, because Alpha's pretty insane, and we're gonna need the meta with Rexes, a UD, and an Elderclaw for that one. But I'm planning on using the megaraptors and deinonychus for the Gamma and maybe even the Beta fight, because using the meta is kind of boring, and this way we can give them the Valguero special. And I was pretty excited to get all this going. So without further ado, ladies and gentle soars, it was time to draft some babies into the military. The megaraptors have leveled up, and they're now all around 12k health and 600 melee. Yeah, they still kind of suck. There's not really much room for melee when you need 30 points into health just to not die. But I think we should probably address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the Rex in the room. Because all of the baby Rex bodies glitched out, and they wouldn't let me harvest them. So now my dungeon just permanently looks like we've been committing war crimes. And I mean, technically that is true, but I don't want it to look like it. But anyways, I took a quick trip out to the yard and try to ignore the dead bodies here as well, please. But we were here to farm some fiber to use all of the hide that I got from my slightly unethical activities to make saddles for the megaraptors. And it took a bit more hide for the last two, but now everybody's saddled up, and I ended up spending the rest of the day just getting everything organized at my base. Because on day 67, the megaraptors were almost healed up for the boss fight. They just needed about one more day. So in the meantime, I wanted to go find the artifact of the crag for the alpha boss fight that I'm going to be doing on day 100. And it's located in the lava cave. So I made sure that my grapple supply was supplied, abducted my highest melee boss Rex, Groot himself, and a rock drake from Temu, and set out for some lava on a wyvern named Igloo. But the lava cave on this map isn't exactly hard, it's just sketchy. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. Because when I arrived and summoned a rock drake from Temu, the entrance was filled to the brim with various subspecies of degenerate. So I brought in a backup houseplant, and clearing out the entrance with all this normal stuff, there was a lot of the dudes, but it really wasn't too bad. But that isn't at all why this cave is dangerous. What are you doing? This cave is dangerous because of this. If you can't tell, there's some hot stuff down there. And if I fall into that lava, it's game over. And on my very first jump, that almost happened. Oh, because I almost overshot it pretty bad. But after fighting 3 relatives of Batman, the last of which decided to give me rabies on his way out, I took a look around. And this cave is commonly referred to as the loot crate cave, because there's 2 loot crates in here that are pretty good. But I'm not risking any of that. In fact, I don't even trust this guy right now, because grapples are just so much safer. And we came here for one reason. And that one reason was right across this little lava river. The artifact of the crag. Okay, what even is a crag? A steep or rugged cliff. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But anyways, the cave wasn't too bad. And when I returned home to base, I was super excited to run upstairs and get all of my artifacts ready. But I couldn't do that because someone's giant forehead was blocking my staircase. And at this point, I was as ready as I'm gonna get. So I grabbed the artifacts of the Devourer, the Skylord, and the pack from my mortar and pestle, cryoed the squad of disappointment, and attempted to clean up a crime scene, but it still won't let me farm the Rex bodies. I guess this is my home now. But I have more important matters to attend to at the moment, because over at the Red Obelisk, the megaraptors were getting settled in and ready for their boss fight debut. And I didn't realize this until right now, but the megaraptors can actually strafe side to side, which is really cool. But with 11 raptors of the mega variety all ready for battle, we needed 9 more creatures for the fight, because you're only allowed to bring 20 total, and we definitely want to fill it up. So I grabbed 7 of the deinonychus and left a breeding pair behind, you know, just in case something bad happens to them. And for the starting lineup, we now have 11 megaraptors, 7 deinonychus, 1 elderclaw named Groot, and 1 monkey man named Harambe. I'm pretty sure Harambe is not surviving this, but he's here for good luck. Here, buddy, you can have my hat. But now everything was ready, or so I thought, because apparently I need some tributes for this fight. Since when does Gamma have tributes? But luckily the tributes were all super easy. And even though the stash of body parts in my mortar and pestle was not very large at the moment, I did already have the Titanoboa venom, and everything else I was a bit short. So I spent the day attending medical school, where I performed 2 Bronto chiropractic procedures, 4 Allo brain surgeries, 4 Sarco skinning sessions, and 3 RG nail clippings. And now that my body part collection was sufficient, it was time. Well, after a quick stop at the medieval abode to drop off Doug the pug, because you're not using one of the 20 spots, no offense, buddy. And now everything was ready, except for me, because I've never done this before. And I didn't even know it at the time, but megaraptors get a debuff when they're in a pack, because they're solo hunters. Meaning I was playing at a severe disadvantage here, and I had no idea. But luckily, at the last moment, I decided to bring in 4 Rexes just in case, because I didn't know what to expect, and I wanted to be safe. Mr. T is about to carry. And I replaced them with these guys, who aren't imprinted yet anyway, so it was a pretty solid trick. But with no other excuses left for me to procrastinate, it was finally time for me to go face to face with the unknown. As the arena constructed, I was scared, because even on Gamma, this fight is hard. Very hard. And I came out here with 11 megaraptors that are all gonna get a debuff because they're in a pack. What have I gotten myself into? But as I entered the arena, there was fog, darkness, and it was scary. So I disabled the fog, and now it's just scary. But as I slowly walked underneath the Archway of Doom, I saw it. And I quickly realized that this wasn't any ordinary fight, because 2 major mechanics could make or break this entire run, revealing him when he goes hunting and avoiding the vultures that can break my armor. And when the red circle appears on the ground, it means that he's hunting, but I'm hunting too. That was rough. But at the end of the day, Gamma Grendel was down. And we must have been related or something, because he left me 90 element in his inheritance, and he left me his entire face. But it wasn't easy, and it came at a huge cost, because I lost every single megaraptor that I brought into this fight. Probably because they get that debuff I was talking about earlier, but the Rexes got humbled pretty bad as well. I severely underestimated that man, because Gamma is normally pretty easy. And since Alpha is like 10 times harder stronger than Gamma, I was having serious doubts about fighting him on day 100. Bro, it's actually gonna suck if I survived to day 100 on hardcore and then die to the final boss. I'm gonna have to find a good saddle blueprint or something. But one thing was for sure, we needed the tributes, which consisted of 2 artifacts in the snow and spider caves and killing 2 gigas for giga hearts. I haven't even seen a giga yet, but I also needed some more damage, and that's where the Tyrannus comes in. I wanted to tame one of these guys because he has a roar effect that buffs the entire team's damage and damage resistance. And after visiting the Chalk Hills to relocate Mr. T's trap house, I began flying into the sunset. And when I made it to the snow, the second Uti I saw was level 130. So I wasted no time, set up the trap, and now all that was left to do was get this man's attention. Hello, good sir. May I interest you in the trap lifestyle? The Uti was intrigued, and he followed me all the way back until I perched on the ledge here. And with wyverns, this is pretty easy, because right when he hits you, you just kind of fly away and let gravity do its job. But anyways, now that he was stuck, it shouldn't take that many arrows with my apprentice crossbow. But he definitely was not making this easy for me, because bro is over here doing the Cupid shuffle. But after a few bedtime stories to the brainstem, and defending my honor against some haters, it didn't take long until he lost the ability to be awake. And a few minutes later, Chewbacca was tamed. Well, that was fast. But the reason that it was so fast was because the dude was level 27. Wait, what? How? Excuse me? Bro, did I just get catfished? I somehow just tamed the wrong Uti, and I didn't even notice. I think that might be the first time I've ever done that. But there were like 5 more of these dudes nearby. They all suck, by the way. But the 130 had moved all the way over here to continue being a menace to society. So while he was busy committing that tomfoolery, I took the opportunity to set up my trap. But the exact moment that I placed the foundation, he started Naruto running over. Oh, why did he aggro? And at this point, I wasn't sure exactly what to do, because the Uti was standing on my unfinished trap. So I decided to just try and do a free range tame, which is where you just shoot at the guy with no trap and you pray for the best. But the moment that my arrow left the crossbow, a dire heathen snuck up behind me. Oh, no. I could use some help over here, Igloo. My life was flashing before my eyes, and Igloo was nowhere to be found. But luckily, the Uti just got randomly distracted on something, and I got away. Igloo, what the heck, bro? I whistled for you. But anyways, after relocating the trap house, yet again, I did the exact same method as last time on this man, works every time, and cleared the area, because there's a whole lot of hoopla going on. On day 73, I began teaching nighttime techniques to a captive audience, and it was going pretty well until Igloo randomly got scared from the Uti's roar and began running to his mother. Where are you going? But luckily he remembered that he doesn't have a mother anymore and decided to no longer be scared. And about 20 more trank arrows later, he was finally down. Okay, this is actually the 130 this time. And after feeding him some raw Argentavis and waiting for about 20 minutes, the real Chewbacca was tamed, and the other one needed a new name. And back at the royal abode, I made a saddle for Chewbacca, and I was about to get ready for the last 2 artifact caves when I realized something else. Oh wait, we need 5 more Rexes. Yeah, we have 15 and 2 of them aren't even imprinted. So I spent my evening officiating a few Rex-like wedding ceremonies and made an investment into their future children. But since someone left a mess inside the breeding room in my dungeon, I had to move the air conditioner over to the left side. But eventually the army was ready. And it's a good thing that they all came in facing the wall, because imagine being born and the first time you open your eyes, you just see this. How to create childhood trauma 101. But anyways, I gave them some meat that I got from Chewbacca's friends over in the snow, and I can't go too far away from my base because of the imprint timer. So we'll have to wait before doing the ice cave. But I still did have a couple tributes for the alpha fight I needed to collect. And after getting a fireplace from a blue drop in the redwoods, I headed back to the red obelisk to write down the tributes that I needed, which were mostly all the same as Gamma, plus 15 Rex arms, and of course, the 2 Giga Hearts. And that one's the hard part. So I spent most of day 75 slaying both of my mortal enemies until I came across an Alpha Rex. Now, there isn't any reason for me to fight this guy because I don't need the tributes from the Alphas, but I just kinda wanted to. And this is where everything started going downhill. Because even though the fight was going well at first, and the Ice Breath allowed me to keep my distance while doing about 700 damage per bite, he did about 300 damage in retaliation, and that wouldn't have been a problem on its own. But after dealing well over 30k damage, flying away for some stamina, and then doing like another 20k, the brother started to run. And this is where they get you. Because as he was running away, I let my guard down, and I didn't even realize that I was out of stamina. So the moment that he turned back around, it was already too late. Oh no, bro, I can't fly. Somehow, this guy still wasn't dead. I don't know how much health he has, but Igloo's health was getting dangerously low. Come on, man, just die already. And at this point, I just had to make sure that I made it out of this alive. So I waited as long as I possibly could, but I had to abandon Igloo while he was being dismembered. And then he died in the very next hit. Oh, no way. If I didn't dismount, he would have had it. And just like that, Igloo was no longer with us. And to make matters worse, I had to go on foot all the way back to base. But the hardcore run was still alive, and that's all that mattered. Because we made it back just in time to imprint the baby Rexes, who desperately wanted to go on a 7-meter walk around my front yard. And after cooking up some breakfast over an open flame in my bedroom, I took a quick trip back to the snow to find a replacement for our beloved Igloo. May he rest in peace. But I didn't even make it to the Wyvern Scar, because on the way there, I found this. Ooh, only level 50. I needed 2 gigahearts for the alpha boss fight, and this was actually perfect. I'm coming back for you. But anyways, over in the Scar, most of Igloo's ancestors were out running some errands over in the sky, which gave me a pretty decent window of opportunity for this nest. Minus one small problem. Well, first of all, the egg was level 20. Wow. But the one singular wyvern on this side of the Scar was not happy about my visit. Oh, he sees me. I didn't have any time to cryo Terabyte, and Groot's attack range was shorter than a TikTok user's attention span. And at this point, since it wasn't letting me hit the dude, I was really worried about Terabyte making it out of here alive. But luckily, Groot made up for his shortcomings with pure raw damage, and Terabyte lived on to see another day. I have got to be more careful. But every single wyvern egg in this entire ice scar was terrible. So I made the executive decision to go deeper into the fire trench. This was a bad idea, because first of all, the entire tunnel was covered in manti and saliva connoisseurs, and that was bad enough. But when it opened up into the lava chamber, I realized how dangerous this actually was. Because even if I do manage to steal an egg here, I still have to make it out, and I'm on a pteranodon. Yeah, I'm not risking this. So I left with no wyvern eggs, and the road home wasn't exactly peaceful, but the important thing is we lived on to see another day. And after spending some time with my dinosaur children, I remembered seeing that Giga in the snow yesterday, because she was only level 50, and I have several full health leveled boss Rexes, meaning this should be pretty easy. Or maybe those are my famous last words, because after being flabbergasted at the sheer volume of polar bears that live in the North Pole, I summoned the entire family lineage of Mr. T, and we went on a heist to steal the heart of a very scary woman. That was easy. And on day 78, everything was looking pretty good at base. The Rexes just needed to heal up a little bit. So I suited up in some very cozy fur boots, which were good enough to keep me warm by themselves, by the way. And I decided that it's finally time to take on the Ice Cave for the Artifact of the Cunning and the Artifact of the Destroyer. And I wanted to use the only megaraptor that we have left for this cave, because I didn't know about their lone hunting thing earlier, and I didn't really give this dude a fair shot. But as soon as I entered the cave, I saw this. Are those polar bears? Oh, nah. Polar bears in this game are kind of insane. And the reason I was scared, well, okay, so I do like 100 damage, right? And I only have like 6k health. Is that brother flying? Anyways, I decided to use Groot to take out Mr. Polar Bear, who was pretty tanky and did like 100 damage per hit. But I still wanted to give Nightmare his spotlight. So I tested him out against this next wave of direwolves. And I do have to say, this man's attacks are pretty cool. But it didn't last very long, because as soon as I entered the ice doorway, Mr. Polar Bear had reincarnated. And after a very long fight using the Megaraptor damage reduction, well, we did come out on top, but Nightmare was hanging on to dear life by a thread. And once again, we were back to Sir Groot. But even with something as overpowered as an elderclaw, this cave was still relentless. Because in the next section, more and more psychopaths just kept coming out of nowhere, until eventually I got knocked back. And then this happened. Oh, please land in the water. Oh no, I was surrounded by polar cretins, and my health was already low, but by some miracle, I still had the Rexes on me from the Giga fight, and they legitimately saved my life that day. Oh my gosh, this cave is insane. I started using the Rex, and I started taking it a whole lot slower, but just up this ramp was the doorway. Why are there so many buffoons in here? And this is the first time, because I accidentally did it, that I pulled up the elderclaw controls on like the right side of my screen right there, but apparently you can detonate the totems that he places down. Oh, so that's why it like charges up, right? I really wanted to try that out, but there's way too many Eskimos down there, so I just kind of used Mr. T's massive jawline to slowly pick them off until it was a bit more manageable down there. And now we can test it out. Groot's spirit token was able to charge up a decent amount, and his health was able to charge down a decent amount. But with the charge looking good, it was time for detonation. What did that even do? The totem explosion was basically just a knockback effect, which is still kind of useful, but it's not great to be honest. But anyways, this was the artifact chamber. And after convincing a few more residents of the Ice Age to enter Mr. T's mouth, the artifact of the cunning has finally been secured. And it took me a minute to actually figure out where this other tunnel was, but over by the strategically placed Prolovias was this little crouch tunnel that led me to the easiest parkour course of all time. Because down there is yet another death barrier. They really like these things, huh? And if I fall, I instantly die, and the hardcore run is over. So I decided to shoot my grapple into that fella's nostril over there, but apparently wildcard disabled grapples in this room. Oh, come on, man. I was over here practicing my jumps on the ground just to see how far I go. But a few hops, one skip, and a measly jump later, the artifact of the destroyer was in the bag. And with all of that taken care of, the only things left for the Alpha Grendel fight were to complete the spider cave, get the rest of the tributes, which includes one more Gigaheart, and let these Rexes finish healing up. So on day 80, I took out the easy stuff first, and took Mr. T on tour, where we visited the Argies, the Florida Gators, the Allos, and the Rexes. And with only one artifact and one Gigaheart remaining, and 19 days remaining, we were in the final stretch, and I had to make the most of it. Because even though I have plenty of time, Grendel had plenty of being difficult, W grammar. And if I actually want to have a chance, I needed to level my Rexes as much as physically possible. So I decided to start back up the Rex factory, move the generator, air conditioner, and torches outside over to the wall here, and I now had about 10 days to accomplish two major objectives. First of all, I need to farm some more hide and metal so that every single Rex has a saddle. And more importantly, every single one of these gentlemen is going to level up by spawn trapping their offspring. $1,500 melee and 35,000 health. Those are the stats of my 17 boss Rexes, and most of them are actually healed up, but a few could use some time to recover from their self-improvement journey. And also, the MVP of the crew, Chewbacca himself, is at 3k stamina, so he can roar loudly and proudly without experiencing asthma. But there is only 17 Rexes because these ones in my inventory here have no imprint, and therefore will be sent to the gulag. But anyways, we were doing pretty well, and only 2 artifacts remained, both of which were protected by Mama Brood herself. These broodmothers aren't as strong as the real boss broodmothers because they're a lower level, but they are still built like Thanos himself, and I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. So as Mr. T began unhinging his jaw, well, the broodmother wasn't doing that much damage, and with the sheer amount of levels into melee, I was. And this was pretty relieving to be honest, because I thought that she was going to be a lot stronger, but then this happened. Wait, she has a twin? 2 broodmothers was more than one. I meant to say 2 broodmothers is more than Mr. T can handle. Obviously, it's more than one. What am I saying? And even though I was doing okay, they had insane health. So I summoned Groot, another boss Rex, and a rock drake from Temu, and that seemed to even the playing field a bit. They were still pretty strong, but about 100,000 damage later, The target had been eliminated, and the loot consisted of 2 spider flags, a bunch of saddles that are not Rex saddles, therefore I do not care, and some Mastercraft flak boots. But day 92 had begun, and as I made the entrance bat-free, I made it over to the door, where I realized that I forgot the scuba. And since I don't particularly enjoy asphyxiation, I had to go back for it. So after publicly displaying the remains of my mortal enemy, okay, it's actually kind of cool that you can put it up there. I made so many scuba tanks that I had to use Stephen Hawking to carry them all. But anyways, this time I was gonna use Mr. T as much as possible. And after playing Ring Around the Pillar with level 300 bugs, I made it a little further than last time, when I noticed that the creatures in here don't actually aggro me, because I'm on a Rex. Which could be good, except for the fact that Mr. T accidentally stepped on someone's leg, and the dude spawned in the entire military. But with an in-game boss Rex, I mean, there's not much to say, really. This cave was pretty easy. I just had to actually find the artifacts. And after walking over this giant bridge thing in the back of the cave, and putting Mr. T in a Pokeball because he was very large, the artifact of the strong was now in my possession. Well, that was pretty easy. But the artifact of the immune was gonna be much harder, because it's down there, in the heart of the broodmother nest. And I didn't want to go down just yet, because after almost falling into the abyss due to Rex's not being able to jump, I had no grapples. And I went all the way back home again, because I wanted grapples. Because these grapples will allow me to skip over half of the cave after I get the artifact. And you're about to find out why. Because it was time to head down. When I finally hit rock bottom, it was surprisingly peaceful down here. And over through this undersized doorway was the main event, because this was where Mama Brood keeps her brood. And even though they have an indoor pool, I didn't care about any of that, because I was here for one purpose. And over in the back, after slaying some residents real quick, was my target, the artifact of the immune system. By the way, I wasn't even gonna say that. I typed the word immune into Microsoft Word and it just suggested the word system, so I just said it. But anyways, over in the trench, grappling all the way back up the way we came on this bridge allows us to skip the entire second half of the cave where we would have to go swooping all the way around to get back up. And I may or may not have gotten slightly lost on the way back, but at the end of day 94, we made it out. And on day 95, all of the Valguero caves had been cleared and all of the artifacts on this map have been collected. We were in the end game now, and all that was left to do was fight a man named Grendel to the death. Also, I never found a Rex Saddle BP earlier in those loot crates, so I ended up having to just make all of the primitive ones for those guys. And then for some reason, I just got the sudden urge to grab this baby Rex body, drag it all the way into the courtyard, down the stairs, onto the dock, and then just drop him into the ocean. All because I just wanted to say this: I am the Bay Harbor Butcher. I'm sorry. But at this point, we only had 5 days remaining, and there was still one thing left that we needed, and it was the heart of a Giga. My first instinct was to check the snow, since that's where I found the other one earlier, and I spent about 20 minutes here with my search covering the entire tri-state area. So I searched some more, and I searched even more. But this dude was a professional at playing hide and seek. I think bro might be extinct. I did find an elderclaw though. But finally, on day 97, as time was slowly running out, I scoured the entire tundra, making my way back into the snow, where I summoned 5 boss Rexes over at the border, because right across this plains area was a level 60 Giga, and I needed that man's heart. Get him, boys. The Rexes were on the clock, and I tried to buff a team and help out a little bit, but they decided to knock that man back all the way to Uzbekistan, so he was only in my circle for like 4 seconds. Bro would be terrible at a Mr. Beast challenge. And while I was over here struggling to get unstuck from this random rock, they finished that man off. Wow, guess y'all don't need me then, huh? But it doesn't matter how, the job was complete, and after summoning a Terabyte, I was about to leave, and I almost forgot to grab the Giga Heart. Oh, here's the bag. Bro, forgetting that would be tragic. And now, day 98 had begun. And with everything in the bag, both literally and metaphorically, I cryoed the boss Rexes, headed over to the Red Obelisk, and got everything ready. Well, almost everything. Because inside the Red Obelisk terminal, I was 5 aloe brains short. Oh, how did I forget that? So it was time to do some more brain surgery. And now, we're back. Because 17 Rexes a greedy houseplant, and a rock drake from Temu for some bleed damage had all come together for this one historic moment. But they weren't fully finished healing just yet, and I also had a couple things back at base that I needed to take care of. The first of which being I needed some food, and 100 potatoes sounded pretty good. But I also needed some backup flak armor because the vultures on Alpha have over 10k health and they can break my flak in like 4 hits. And that's the part that I'm the most worried about. But as the sun rose on day 100, my time had run out. And I also forgot to summon Chewbacca. And since he wasn't out this whole time, he was still a little low on health. So I sacrificed this Diplo and shoved it down Chewbacca's trachea for 15 minutes straight. And that seemed to do the trick. Because at the end of day 100, everything was ready. And I just wanted to let you guys know, full disclaimer, I tried this fight once already and I'm cutting it out of the video because I died to vultures literally 3 minutes in. Because I got stuck and I couldn't even move. So yes, I did just technically fail the hardcore challenge because of that, but that would have been a terrible way to end the video after we made it this far. So I made a backup save, I decided not to put it in the video, and we're gonna try this one more time. And this time, I was prepared. When we entered the arena, I had a big decision to make, because normally in these arenas I would ride the Yeti, but this time I have him on the ignore whistles and auto roll, because the elderclaw has a buff and stun, and I don't know if it's the right move, but I went for that. But the main two things I need to watch out for here were always moving because of the vultures and keeping the Rexes focused on Grendel. But even with perfect strategy, this fight is extremely difficult. And one wrong move could be absolutely catastrophic. But don't worry, I got this. Oh, let's go! Dude, I did not think I was gonna beat that. And just like that, Alpha Grendel has been defeated, and Ark Valguero Ascended on hardcore has been conquered without a single death. Well, almost. And that man dropped 500 element, which I will not be using. If you guys like this style of video and you want to see me do a hardcore vanilla run on Lost Colony, Ark's brand new map in December when it comes out, please leave a like for the algorithm just to let me know. And let me know in the comments below if you were a part of the first 200k subscribers. We're only 2,000 subs away. And if you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. I'm seriously excited for you guys to see the stuff that I'm working on now, but you're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer. Don't forget to download Raid Shadow Legends using the QR code on screen or the link in the description below. And if you want to see me die repeatedly for 100 days straight in the hardest mod pack ever made, click right here.